King of France. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Traveling to the Era of Execution by Firing Squad. Ning remembered that he should have been drowsy on the subway, hanging on the ring. Recently, the silly product manager had another brilliant idea, so Ning and his technical team worked overtime to realize this brilliant idea. Today, everything was finally done, and in the blink of an eye, the whole team ran away, fearing that the product manager would have a new brilliant idea and pull people back to work overtime. Ning was one of them. It was only 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but he was so sleepy that he couldn't open his eyes. He relied on the energy drink he bought from the vending machine before entering the subway station. This was in Ning's memory until just now. Now, he looked at everything in front of him in confusion. Just like on the subway, Ning was now surrounded by many people, but these people were all wearing Western clothes like opera costumes, and their hair and eyes were completely Western. Moreover, these people all carried things that looked like rifles. Most Chinese men are part-time military fans, and Ning recognized that these were so-called flintlock muskets. This is the main weapon of the era of lineup shooting, as military fans call it. It looks like Ning is now among the line infantry marching in formation. Ning looked down at his clothes, and sure enough, they were the same as the person next to him. He became a line infantryman. Then Ning discovered something. He didn't have a gun. Instead, there was a marching drum hanging in front of him. Ning had played this thing in the Young Pioneers Drum and Bugle Corps when he was in elementary school. But he should have forgotten how he played it at the time, but now he plays the drums freely in coordination with his footsteps, as if he had never neglected this skill over the years. I traveled to the era of lineup shooting and became a military musician? Ning opened his mouth wide, and for a moment he couldn't recover from the shock brought by this astonishing fact. But this world is not kind enough to wait for Ning to accept reality. A shriek came from the sky. Then a black shadow landed not far in front of Ning on the left. The thing spun and bounced, rushing towards Ning like an oversized bowling ball. Ning subconsciously closed his eyes, and then he heard the screams of the people beside him. When he opened his eyes, he saw the people beside him falling down in a row. The shells just went straight through the queue, leaving behind a row of unlucky people with their legs broken below the knees and screaming. Ning had goosebumps on the back of his head, and he wanted to vomit. Then the second shell came. This time the shell hit the queue before it landed. It turned from a ground ball into a high fly ball, brushing over everyone's head with a piercing whistle, and then hit an unlucky tall man. The man's head was like a watermelon falling from the 10th floor, and it broke into pieces with a crack. Ning couldn't even say the word fuck. The large amount of adrenaline secreted made his breathing rapid, and his heart seemed to break through his ribs and jump out of his chest. But his hands were still beating the drums in a well-trained manner, as if they belonged to two different parts from Ning's already panicked brain. Led by Ning's drum beats, the pale-faced line infantryman advanced mechanically. Another shell fell. This time it was a lime bomb that exploded in the air. The fuse was not long enough, so it exploded in the air very high, resulting in the sulfur being scattered all over. Ning smelled a strange stench in the air, and then felt a burning pain in his lungs. The people beside him coughed violently. Ning wanted to run, throw away the marching drum and run away from this hell full of blood, stench and screams, but he was held by his comrades and could not move at all, so he could only keep moving forward. The pain caused by the burning in his lungs was even more terrible. Another shell fell. Screams filled Ning's ears, drowning out the sound of military music. Ning saw that the flag bearer on the left was knocked down, and someone immediately rushed up to take over and carry the flag again. The symbol on the flag looked like an iris. French army? Indeed, the military uniform looked very much like France, with white as the main color, light blue lapels, and gray suspenders. At this time, Ning noticed the officer walking next to the military flag. By the way, if the noble master is shot, I can use the excuse of protecting the noble master to escape from the charge. I've seen this plot in the movie Barry Lyndon. Ning's mind was full of thoughts about how to leave this damn hell. Then the officer was hit by a rolling bullet head-on. The shell jumped up to the right height, breaking the officer in the middle, and by the way, it also named all the privates behind the officer. Ning saw the half-moon-shaped drug tag that only the officer could hang flew high. It's over, no excuses. and Ning suddenly wanted to pee very much at this time, probably because he was too nervous. He squinted his eyes, probably thinking that this should reduce the visual impact of the scene in front of him. Never mind, empty your mind, just rush in. At this time, the line infantry battalion where Ning was located rushed into the thick smoke left by the explosion of an artillery shell, and the vision became completely gray. And Ning simply closed his eyes and stepped forward to the beat of the drum. Because of nervousness, the rhythm of his drum beats accelerated a lot. Suddenly, he felt that there was light on his eyelids. So he opened his eyes a little and found that the team had passed through the smoke, and then there were enemy figures in the wheat field in front. The enemy's formation was very scattered, and it seemed that they were scattered soldiers carrying out harassment operations in front of the line infantry battalion. And Ning heard the people around him exclaimed, "Where are our scattered soldiers?" The next moment, and Ning saw the flash of firing. The gunshot came a beat slower, and the bullet had penetrated the sergeant in front of Ning who replaced the noble master. The people around Ning were also shot, and fell down in a mess. Only Ning himself and the flag bearer 4 bodies away were still standing. And Ning closed his eyes again, waiting for death to come. Damn, this kind of crossing is too pitiful. But no bullets continued to fly. He opened his eyes and saw the skirmishers in front of him loading bullets. However, because the rifles used by the skirmishers have rifling in pursuit of accuracy, the fit between the bullet and the barrel is also tighter, so when loading bullets, it is necessary to use a hammer to hit the rod to force the bullet into the barrel. In short, this kind of accurate muzzle-loading rifle is very slow to load. At this time, the command came from the far left, "Everyone, stop moving forward." And Ning's hand reflexively hit the drum beat of "Stop moving forward." In the era of line infantry, the marching drum was a prop used to command the marching of the queue. "Raise your gun." The command still came from a long distance. This command was transmitted by many people, and it sounded like an echo. And Ning did not have a gun, he only had a marching drum. Some of the skirmishers on the opposite side had already finished loading bullets. Seeing that this side stopped and prepared to shoot, these people immediately opened fire and turned around and ran. The mission of the skirmishers was to harass, not to shoot at the line infantry. Because there was no volley, the killing efficiency this time was much lower than the previous volley, but the skirmishers were holding rifle guns, which were much more accurate than smoothbore guns. Many people fell to the ground around Ning. And Ning kept repeating in his heart, "You can't hit me, you can't hit me." The command came, "Fire." Then the gunshots almost deafened Ning's ears. And Ning's entire vision was blocked by the smoke formed by the smoothbore gun shooting. It was white and he couldn't see anything. The air was full of the pungent smell left by the incomplete combustion of gunpowder. At this time, and Ning somehow changed the way he played the drums and began to beat out a series of short drum beats, and Ning realized that this was using drum beats to beat the rhythm for the troops to load. He remembered that he had watched a program on the Discovery Channel. In the era of line execution, the time to complete each step of the line infantry loading was equivalent to a measure in 3/4 of a beat of music. And the short drum beats that Ning beat were 3/4 of a beat. And Ning speculated that his soul must have been transferred to a well-trained drummer, so his body had formed muscle memory. While beating the drums, he glanced at his comrades beside him, and then found that the comrade closest to him on the left, the closest living comrade to him, was shaking his hands when he was removing the preloaded gunpowder bag, and almost all of the gunpowder was spilled on the ground. Then this person directly loaded the remaining gunpowder into the gun chamber and started the next step. Damn, our army is going to lose this training speed. At this moment, a shell flew over, and the comrade Ning was observing was gone, leaving only 2 calves stuck in the ground. And Ning cursed, and then because of the sweat in his hands, he didn't hold the drumstick tightly and dropped it to the ground. Damn. He was about to pick up the drumstick when he saw the white smoke from the shooting in front of him dissipate, and the enemy's line infantry also came into view. The enemy's uniform looks like Prussia. The Kingdom of France fighting Prussia? The 7 Years' War? And Ning could clearly hear the military music from the opposite side. The shining bayonets on the opposite side were like a row of neat forests, just like they had legs and moved quickly towards Ning. And Ning, who lived in peacetime, had never seen such a scene. The command came, "Raise your guns." And Ning felt that the person who gave the command was obviously panicking, and the command was given a little too early. And Ning looked around and found that many of his comrades had not finished reloading and were hurriedly pulling out the cleaning rods from the barrels. "It's over, it's over. Aim." and Ning saw a comrade hurriedly stuffing the pulled-out cleaning rod back into the slot under the musket, but he couldn't get it in, so he simply threw away the cleaning rod and raised his gunfire. The crackling sound of gunfire washed in Ning's ears again. The white smoke once again completely blocked the view, blocking the enemy's gray military uniforms and the shining bayonet forest. The effect of the volley of gunfire could not be seen at all. All he could hear was the enemy's military music getting louder and louder. Another lime bomb exploded in the air, and the overwhelming quicklime made many people scream. Amid the screams, the enemy's military music became more majestic, while the military band on Ning's side seemed to have gone silent. And Ning saw from the corner of his eye that some people in the loosened queue had quietly retreated. At this time, the smoke dispersed, and the enemy's line infantry appeared within 50 meters in front. And Ning could even see the ornaments and medals on the enemy's leading officer. Then the enemy's command came over. Stand still. Then the queue stopped moving forward. Raise your guns. The neat forest of spears fell down in unison. And Ning was completely desperate, and he realized very deeply that the god of death was opening his arms to embrace him. Damn, this is not fair. I don't even have time to accept the fact that I have traveled through time, and I'm going to die here. Damn, even if I really have to die here, you can at least give me a gun and let an enemy take the blame. Giving me a drum is too much of a bully, isn't it? Fire. Along with the command, there was the sound of gunfire like spring festival firecrackers. The enemy's appearance was completely engulfed in the white smoke of shooting. And Ning heard bullets whistling in his ears. It was like the whisper of the god of death. And Ning decided to just lie on the ground. It is better to live than to die, so he will save his life first. Now he is falling backwards, looking like he was shot, and no one will say that Ning is a deserter. However, at the moment Ning made this decision, he was shot. With a buzz, all thoughts left him, and his body fell backwards naturally without control. And Ning opened his eyes after an unknown amount of time. He stared at the stars in the sky, and was stunned for a long time before he remembered what was going on. I was shot? And Ning hurried to confirm his condition. When he touched his head, sticky blood covered his hand, and pain came with it. He was shot on the head. And Ning carefully checked the condition of the wound. He knew that touching the wound with dirty hands could lead to infection, but in this situation, the wound was so dirty that touching it would not make the situation worse. So Ning confirmed that the wound was not deep, and it felt like a bullet hit his forehead and then ricocheted. Ricochet? The bullets of a smoothbore gun are all spherical lead bullets, and this kind of thing will collide with the inner wall of the barrel irregularly before leaving the gun, and the flight state is very random. There are many examples of skull ricochets in the history of the Earth. However, the probability of encountering such a thing is much lower than winning the sports lottery. So much so that Ning couldn't help but suspect that this was his cheat. After traveling through time, there must be a cheat, right? And Ning thought so and slapped his head hard. It hurts. I'd better not confirm the hardness of my head. What if I'm really lucky this time? He propped himself up and began to check the situation around him. It seemed that the sun had just set not long ago, and there was still a little bit of sunset glow on the horizon. There was the light of a bonfire in the distance, and people in gray military uniforms were cleaning the battlefield, but they didn't seem to be working very hard. They were probably preparing to do this seriously tomorrow. The enemy should also need to rest after just finishing a big battle. There were several enemies wandering around the battlefield. And Ning stared at them for a while before he was sure that they were looting the dead's belongings. He saw one of them take off the shoes of the corpse and put them on his feet happily. And Ning touched himself and made sure that there should be no property. His military uniform was also a soldier's uniform, and the enemy's main target should be officers. In this era, officers were all nobles and should have valuables on them. And Ning continued to lie on the ground and adjusted a more comfortable posture. At this time, he suddenly saw a white crescent-shaped dog tag worn by officers next to him. Otherwise, I will pretend to be an officer and surrender to the enemy. In this era, war should still follow some rules, and nobles will be treated with courtesy. And Ning still has a wound on his head. If it gets infected, he might have a fever and die. The medical level in this era is very poor, and the main treatment method is bloodletting. If he gets infected, he will die quickly. If he surrenders, he should quickly get some strong liquor to clean the wound, and the chance of survival will be higher. And Ning was very surprised. His thoughts were particularly clear now, as if he had been enlightened by a bullet in the head. After making a decision, Ning reached out to take the half-moon dog tag, Then his hand was held down. Shocked, and Ning looked at the person who held his hand, and saw a young face. Although it was dirty, it was still clear that this was a handsome boy. "Save me, I am the son of the Duke of Orleans, I can't be captured here," the boy said. "And Ning, get out, can't you see I'm injured?" And Ning is a modern man, and he comes from an ancient Eastern country that emphasizes our kings, princes, generals, and ministers of different races. He doesn't care about the title of Duke. However, the boy fainted after he finished speaking and did not hear Ning's answer. And Ning pushed away the boy's hand that was grabbing his wrist and picked up the dog tag. Just at this moment, a whistle blew from the campfire. And Ning stopped and slightly raised his upper body to see what was going on. He found that those who were cleaning the battlefield and those who were looting property from the pile of corpses had stopped their work and gathered towards the campfire. Perhaps the whistle was a signal to assemble. And Ning suddenly realized that this seemed to be a good opportunity to escape. The last glimmer of light in the sky had disappeared, and there was no moon in the sky. It was pitch black, perfect for escaping. And Ning glanced at the boy who had just asked for help and estimated the effect of his body shape on the speed of escape. Well, it seems more profitable to save a noble and run back. So, and Ning took action. He quietly got up, removed the strap of the marching drum that was still wrapped around him, and then carried the boy on his shoulders and ran wildly in the night. Chapter 2: Deserters and Bandits. The moment he carried the son of the Duke of Orleans on his back, a small glowing symbol appeared in Ning's vision. It looked like the kind of mission objective guide when playing games. At the same time, a mission prompt appeared on the left side of the vision: open the branch descendants of the Celestial family, send the Duke's son back to the Duke safely. Why is the Duke of Orleans named Celestial? Shouldn't the Duke of Orleans be called Louis Philippe? The reason why Ning knew the name of the Duke of Orleans was because when the Bourbon dynasty was restored later, the son of the Duke of Orleans became the King of France. The Duke's name was actually different from that of another time and space. And Ning didn't know what it meant. He didn't think too much, and followed the instructions and started running. After running a few steps, he felt that something was always hitting his thigh, which was very uncomfortable. Then he found a bare tree for cover, squatted down and put down the sun to check what was going on. It turned out to be the saber hanging on the Duke's son. The end of the scabbard was always restless and hid in Ning's eye again and again. And Ning surrendered the saber without saying a word and held it in his hand. His vision changed immediately, and a saber image appeared in the lower right corner of his vision, which obviously represented the weapon he was equipped with. As expected, as a time traveler, I have a system. And Ning immediately planned to arm himself and turn himself into a tough guy who could switch weapons with the number keys 0 to 9, so that he would have a way to deal with anything he encountered on the way to escape. He then used the shadows to cover himself and felt around the tree, and finally touched a rifle. It is possible that the victorious party has already preliminarily cleaned up the battlefield and confiscated the rifles and other things on the ground. The barrel of the gun that Ning touched was already filled with mud, and the mud was pressed very tightly and dried. It didn't seem to loosen at all after shaking it. This rifle has become a mallet. It is estimated that the remaining weapons on the battlefield are almost in this state, and it is dark now, so it is not easy to search. At this time, a joyful chorus floated from the enemy's camp in the distance, reminding Ning that he is still under the enemy's nose. If the enemy is alarmed, there will be nowhere to escape. And Ning put down the rifle that had become a stick, and crawled towards the young master's position in the dark. On the way, he touched something quite elastic. At first, he thought he had touched a woman's vagina, but then he found that it was a leather water bag with half a bag of water in it. Yes, I don't know where I can get supplies on this run, so I have to bring the water bag. And I've been lying dead all day, so I need dry food when I'm hungry. And Ning groped and began to search again. Unfortunately, the line infantry would put down their luggage and dry food before the attack, and go into battle lightly. And Ning searched for a long time, but apart from the water bag just now, he didn't touch anything edible. He didn't know what time it was now, and how many hours it would take to dawn. Maybe the latitude here is high, and it's early in the morning in midsummer. Karen. And Ning carefully groped back to the original place, carried the young master of the Duke's family on his back, held the young master's saber, and then ran straight to the prompt symbol in his field of vision in the dark night. Not long after he began to flee, and Ning heard the Prussians finish singing, and then someone started a new tune. This was a sad lyric song about a lame old soldier who returned to his hometown, only to find that his wife had passed away, leaving only a lonely grave. This sad tune made Ning want to surrender to the enemy, especially the high-pitched solo after the chorus, which made the whole night desolate. Ning could hear that the enemy was not speaking the same language as Ning was using now, but he couldn't tell what language the enemy was speaking. In theory, Ning had heard more or less European languages. He liked to play a game called War Thunder, in which drivers from different countries could be set to speak their own languages. Ning was used to the pronunciation of common European languages, such as German and French, through this game. But the enemy's language sounded completely different from any language Ning had ever heard. But Ning could still understand it. This might be a benefit for time travelers. By the way, the language Ning used himself was not Chinese at all, but he understood it naturally, and he spoke this language directly without thinking too much. This should be a benefit for time travelers. Otherwise, after traveling through time, you have to spend several months learning the language of this world, which is too torturous. Ning thought while running wildly, trying to get as far away from the enemy camp as possible. There was something on the young master's body, which kept poking in Ning's back, and it was hard. From the shape, it might be a medal. I couldn't carry this young man anymore, so I threw him away and took the medal back to the Duke. I felt that I had completed part of the task. This young man was also unlucky. He wore a handsome officer's uniform and a big medal to go to the battlefield, but he ended up suffering a great defeat. His life and property depended on Ning, a passerby who suddenly appeared. Ning ran while thinking wildly. He had already run past 3 waypoints, but the next waypoint still appeared in the distance. This system is it doesn't even show how far the waypoint is, and just hangs Ning in the distance. As Ning ran, he was worried about whether he would encounter enemy cavalry. After all, he was running on a vast plain with few trees. If it was daytime, the cavalry would be able to see him from a long distance. I hope the enemy cavalry is also celebrating the victory with the infantry. Ning ran past another navigation path point. At this time, his strength was gradually exhausted and he began to be unable to run. He looked back and found that the bonfire of the enemy camp was far away, so he found a bush by the roadside, put the young master down, and then rested against the bush. At this time, the young master woke up. Water. Ning took out the leather water bag, drank a big sip to quench his thirst, and then handed it to the young master. The water in the water bag had a strange smell, but Ning couldn't care less now. The young master took a sip of water, then smacked his lips while returning the water bag to Ning. "What's your name?" the young master asked Ning in a clear and weak boyish voice. "The Lannister family will repay favors and pay debts. And debts must be paid. Are you from the Lannister family?" Despite his complaints, Ning still began to think about how to reply, and then he found that he actually had memories of this life, but he had been suppressed by the fierce war and the tense escape before, so he didn't notice these. It is now 1780 in this world. Ning's name in this life is Andy Frost. He lives in Scene and his father is a leather craftsman. The son of a leather craftsman plays a marching drum in the army. It makes sense. Maybe the drumhead of the marching drum that Ning threw away was tanned by Ning's father himself. In addition, Andy and Ning are pronounced almost the same, so they can be used interchangeably. So Ning, no, Andy whispered, "My name is Andy Frost, and I'm the son of a leatherworker." "Really?" "I'm Klotz de Lerstal, the third son of the de Lerstal family. You can call me Klotz. My father is the Duke of Orleans." "Ning, I see, Mr. de Lerstal." Although he was told that he could call her by her name, Ning still decided to be cautious. After all, he had just traveled through time and was unfamiliar with the place. What if he violated a taboo? Klotz seemed a little dissatisfied with Ning's reaction, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he turned his head and looked at the wilderness behind him. "I came to experience the battlefield. I thought this would be a glorious victory." Ning shrugged. If it was the 7 Years' War, it would not be shameful for the Prussian army to lose to Frederick the Great. The problem is that Ning vaguely remembers that it is already 1780. If this is the 7 Years' War, isn't it a little too late to fight? Is the historical process of parallel time and space different? Never mind, whether it was the 7 Years' War or not, what did it have to do with Ning, a military musician who played drums? Ning only wanted one thing now, to escape back to his own people, and then see how de Lerstal would repay his kindness. It would be best if he could stay away from the battlefield from now on. Ning recalled his experience this morning, and the horror of the battlefield gripped his heart again. The desire to escape from the war that had sprouted at that time came again. I don't want to go to the battlefield again in my life. Just as Ning was thinking this, a red arrow suddenly jumped out of his field of vision. Ning, an old game player, saw this situation and immediately realized that there were enemies around. He immediately turned to face the direction of the red arrow, and at the same time pulled out the saber of Master Telestal that he had always carried with him. At this time, a gap appeared in the dark clouds in the sky, and moonlight fell from the gap in the clouds, illuminating the 5 figures in front of Ning. At first glance, these 5 people were wearing military uniforms, but a closer look revealed that these uniforms were not all the same. Some of them wore officers' white tights on the lower body, but privates' gray uniforms on the upper body, and grenadiers' dogskin hats on their heads. There was no doubt that this was a group of bandits who made a fortune by looting the battlefield. The leading robber was wearing an officer's jacket with a bunch of medals hanging on the chest in a mess, as well as 2 officers' half-moon dog tags. It was unknown how many officers they had looted. Oh, this personal guard is really loyal. The bandit leader with medals grinned. The moonlight illuminated his gap teeth. But will your master give you a cent? Why not join us and rob him? He must have gold coins on him, we will give you some. The leader turned his head and looked at his subordinates, and seemed to count a wave of heads before saying, give you 1/5. Immediately, a bandit teased, boss, you forgot to count yourself. It's 1/6. Shut up. Didn't you see I'm negotiating with someone? The leader glared at the person who was talking, and then looked at Ning with a knife. What do you think? Consider it. Another bandit with a pitchfork grinned and said, come on, he doesn't understand what we say. But Ning understood. After hearing what the bandit said, he realized that the other party was speaking German, and he understood the other party's German as if he heard Chinese. So is this also my cheat? And Ning spoke up, I understand what you are saying. Wow, the bandit leader showed surprise. It seems that the officer has an attendant who knows German. This means he has prepared for the worst. How about considering our proposal just now? And Ning was indeed considering it. Among the 5 people on the other side, except for 2 holding pitchforks, the rest were holding knives or bayonets removed from guns, and he only had a saber. It was obvious that he could not defeat the opponent in a fight, so at this time he should, in a flash, and Ning heard the sound of the hammer of a flintlock being cocked behind him. Behind him was only the young Master Klotz who was resting against a tree. The next moment, a gunshot was heard. No one knew where the bullet flew to, but none of the 5 people seemed to be shot. The bandit leader roared, damn it! Kill them! And rushed towards Ning waving the knife in his hand. At this moment, Ning entered bullet time, just like in the Assassin's Creed series of games. In the game, as long as you press the correct button during bullet time, you can use a beautiful defensive counterattack to kill the enemy instantly. Of course, this simple and crude system has disappeared in the latest Assassin's Creed games. But this does not affect Ning's body's flexible movements. He used the saber in his hand to block the bandit leader's knife, and then cut his throat cleanly with a sword. The bandit leader knelt on the ground, holding his neck, struggling to speak, but his throat, which was sizzling with blood, finally made a faint hissing sound. The bandit leader fell to the ground with a hissing sound. This process happened too quickly, and several bandits who were about to rush up were stunned in place, staring at the leader who fell to the ground. And Ning shouted angrily in German, who else? Several bandits looked at each other, and then the 2 with pitchforks ran away first, and the remaining 2 saw this and threw down their bayonets and turned around and ran. Don't run. Krotz stood up with a gun in his hand and continued to reload anxiously. As a result, his hand shook when he tore the gunpowder bag, and all the gunpowder spilled. And Ning held down the young master's hand while he was reloading. Are you crazy? Firing may attract the enemy. You can see the fire in the enemy's tent from here. But these bandits seem to have killed many officers and soldiers. Come on. Even if you shoot, you can't hit them. Firing with the accuracy of a flintlock rifle on a night like this is almost like winning a lottery. And Ning snatched the pistol and glared at the young master. If you want to go back alive, listen to me. We still have to continue on our journey tonight. The young master pursed his lips, was silent for a few seconds and then nodded, okay. I'll listen to you. He paused, and suddenly showed an expression of admiration. Are you really just a military musician? Your swordsmanship just now was beautiful. Of course it was beautiful, that's because I cheated. And Ning frowned, I only know a little about swordsmanship. As he said that, and Ning put the knife back into the scabbard, and then began to examine the pistol he had just snatched from the young master. The moment he picked up the pistol, the weapon icon in the corner of his vision turned into a pistol. He fiddled with the pistol, then pointed it in the direction where the bandits had just fled, and then the crosshairs appeared. At this moment, Ning had a little idea of his cheat. Chapter 3: A different view on money. In order to confirm his thoughts, Ning touched the wound on his head. Sure enough, after running all the way, the wound had healed. Now, there was only scabby blood on the touch, and he could not feel any pain at all. He exerted a little force, and a piece of scabby blood was knocked off. Logically, the exposed part should bleed again. However, that did not happen. The wound had healed. This should be the same breathing and blood recovery system as in FPS games. As long as you are not hit continuously, you can find a place to hide and take a breath, and you can recover your vitality. However, this breathing time is not as long as a few seconds in the game. For injuries like ricocheting in the head, Ning estimates that it will take more than a day to recover. As for other more serious injuries, I am afraid that the recovery time will be longer. But this does not mean that Ning can rest easy. After all, breathing and blood recovery in the game are different from invincibility. As long as you suffer a fatal injury once, you will still die. In other words, if the gunshot wound in the head this morning had not been ricocheted off, he would have to explain himself. As expected, I still need to find a reason to stay away from the battlefield. It would be best to find a position where I can make plans in the rear, make money from the war, and live a stable and wealthy life. In order to achieve this goal, the young master of the Duke's family, Kratz, must be sent to the Duke. Yes, the mission has been clearly stated. It is not over until he is sent to the Duke, not just to send him back to his own line. Ning put away the flintlock pistol, squatted down and began to touch the torn pockets of the bandit leader. Soon he found a few biscuits and handed one to Kratz. Then he ate the biscuits while searching another pocket, and took out a pocket watch and several gold coins. Ning put the pocket watch and gold coins in his pocket, then glanced at the young master, fearing that he would be disgusted by his behavior of looting corpses. However, Kratz was struggling with the dry and hard biscuits, frowning, and had no time to care about Ning. Ning felt relieved, threw the remaining biscuit into his mouth, and chewed it without any obstacles. Strangely enough, he had no problem chewing the biscuit, except that he was a little thirsty. Ning touched a few other pockets, and after making sure that they were all empty, he took off the identity card and medals from the bandit leader, then took off the dead man's shirt, hugged him, made a bundle and put it on his shoulder. Who knows if you will need money on the way to escape, and these medals and military cards can be kept. Maybe they can be used to exchange for money. After doing this, Ning was about to leave, and suddenly found that the shoes on the bandit leader's feet were very good, much better than his own rotten shoes. So he took off his boots, tried them on his feet, and put them on happily after making sure they were wearable. Good, the first victory after the looting and crossing. Ning stood up, turned around and asked the young master, "Young master, can you still walk now?" The young master nodded. "My feet? No, I can walk." "Okay, I'll help you. When it's dawn, the enemy's cavalry may patrol. Before that, we should get as close to our army as possible." Ning said this with a little bit of uncertainty. The French army has been defeated. God knows whether it can find our army. Maybe it will have to go all the way back to its own country. Yes, France went abroad to fight this time and suffered a great defeat on someone else's land. Just now, those bandits spoke German. From the perspective of the North Germans, this group of thieves came to kill the righteous men of the invading army. Ning helped the young master up and pulled him forward with a staggering step. The young master suddenly asked, "It's so dark, do you know how to go?" Ning, "I know, let's take it one step at a time." In fact, he knew very well how to go. After all, there were task path points to guide him. But he had to pretend to try his luck. The young master nodded, and after walking a few steps, he asked Ning again, "The sword technique you used to kill the robber just now. To be honest, I just improvised. Mr. Talister, we don't have much water, and we don't know how long it will take to get supplies, so it's best to save some saliva." Ning said so. He was not very willing to talk about the sword technique he had just demonstrated. After all, he really hadn't learned it, he was just cheating. What if the young master thought he was a swordsman? It would be bad if he was exposed in the future. Master Kratz shut up. But he didn't keep his mouth shut for long. "Kratz, Mr. Frost, Your performance just now was really heroic. You must be an experienced sergeant. No, no, I'm just a drummer. Krotz, I've always wanted to have a brave bodyguard like you. My orderly was supposed to be by my side, but he ran away after the first round of volleys. And Ning, after being left behind, did you continue to fight to the end? No, I was knocked unconscious by the cannon when I turned my head to call my orderly. What about you, Mr. Frost? I was shot in the head and the bullet ricocheted, and then I relied on the external breathing to recover blood and save my life. And Ning, I was also knocked unconscious. In addition, let me tell you one thing. I'm actually just a military musician who plays drums. You should be able to tell from my clothes. And Ning told the truth. First, this can indeed be seen from the military uniform, so there is no need to hide it. Second, after knowing that she is a military musician, Krotz probably won't insist that Ning is a swordsman with secret swordsmanship. This era should be quite superstitious, and Ning doesn't want people to see that she has a cheat on her. Unexpectedly, Krotz admired him even more. A military musician is so brave. It's a waste for you to be a military musician. When we return to the army, please become my follower. And Ning thought to himself, this is exactly what I want. I will always send you back to your father. The identity of follower is just right. At this time, a line of words suddenly popped up in the lower right corner of Ning's vision. Krotz de Celestial's trust in you has greatly increased. Now he has admiration for you. And Ning raised his eyebrows. He just performed a blocking counterattack in front of this young master and his reputation was raised to admiration? Is it because this young master is naive? No matter what, at this time, the French Revolution should not have broken out. It is a good thing to have a noble young master admiring himself. And Ning now hopes that after returning to the army, this young master will not run to the front line again. He doesn't want to experience this hell again. At this time, Krotz asked Ning again, Mr. Frost, why did you go to the battlefield? And Ning frowned. The young master's question seemed very unworldly. Why else? And Ning asked the young master, besides not being able to pay the tax for exemption from military service, what other reasons can there be? When answering this, Ning's mind emerged the scene when he joined the army. At that time, his mother and sister were crying, and his father, who was a leather worker, had a gloomy face and kept chewing tobacco. According to the king's order, every family must send a man to fight in the war, otherwise they would have to pay a high immunity tax, so Ning had no choice but to join the king's army and became a military musician. Krotz was a little embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry. And Ning shook his head gently. After that, the two of them hurried on in silence until the sky was slightly white. At this time, Ning saw a farmhouse in front of him, and a farmer was opening the door of the farmhouse to let the cows out to eat grass. Ning, young master, are you thirsty? A little. How about your stomach? Klotz's stomach made a strong gurgling sound. Ning, okay, let's go to that farmhouse and see if we can buy some food and water. Okay, I have a few crowns of silver coins. Klotz took out the crowns from his pocket and handed them to Ning. Here you go, I don't speak German. Ning originally wanted to buy it with the money he had collected yesterday, but since the young master was willing to pay, he certainly had no objection. However, Klotz's concept of money was obviously different from that of Ning, a commoner. In Ning's cognition, the unit of currency was mainly sou, and there was no need for currency units such as crowns and livres. The coins on Ning were also in sou. This young master took out silver coins as crowns. We are just buying some supplies, why would we need silver coins like crowns? Ning took the silver coins while muttering to himself, then helped the young master sit down on the side of the road, and then strode towards the farmhouse. Chapter 4, Former Serfs Who Have Nothing to Do with the Matter. Ning originally thought that she would be looked down upon when she went to the German-speaking people to ask for water in the French military uniform. But unexpectedly, the people did not show any hostility to Ning. When Ning approached the farmhouse, an old farmer carrying a hoe came out of his house. The old man stopped as soon as he saw Ning, put the hoe on the ground, looked at Ning with a dull face, and waited quietly. Although the French army had fought a big battle with the German-speaking army a night away from here yesterday, the old farmer still just looked at Ning dully, and did not show any hatred at all. Ning was a little confused for a while, because the memory in his mind showed that the French army marched straight into the German-speaking area and was beaten up by the Prussian army of Frederick the Great. This should be the case. To the people in the German-speaking area, The French army should be the invading army. Could it be that because it is the 18th century and the modern nation-state has not yet been established, the people have no national consciousness? But Ning vaguely remembered as saying that since the Hussite War, Europe has begun to awaken its national consciousness. The Hussite War happened in the 15th century, and now it is the 18th century. It stands to reason that Ning should be facing the Prussian peasants who have awakened their nation, but this is not the case. In any case, when the old German farmer saw the silver coins that Ning took out, he immediately agreed to sell bread and water. He even asked Ning if he needed an ox cart and a driver. The driver was probably himself. After a while, the old farmer took out black bread from his room according to Ning's request, and then pointed to the well in the yard and said, "If you want water, get it yourself." At this time, a woman with patches all over her body came out of the house, hurried to the well, drew a bucket of water, and then scooped a bucket of water with a ladle and gave it to Ning. And Ning took the ladle and returned to the bushes at the door with the bread. "Come, eat something. I'm starving. I only had breakfast yesterday. I thought we'd have a celebration dinner tonight after we won." The young master sighed, took the water scoop and took a big sip, but ended up spitting the water out on the ground. "This water is bitter." And Ning took the water scoop and took a sip. It was indeed bitter, and it tasted like dirt. The young master picked up the bread again, broke off a piece and stuffed it into his mouth, and immediately spit it out. "Damn! There are sawdust. They deliberately gave us bad things to eat." And Ning shook his head. "Master, I don't think so. They don't care who wins between us and Frederick, at least I think so. They are just a group of self-employed farmers who don't care who their king is against." For some reason, and Ning was so sure, probably because of the extraordinary indifference shown by the old farmer during the conversation just now. In addition, and Ning now remembered that when he was at home, he also ate this kind of bread with sawdust. Maybe ordinary people in this era ate this kind of stuff. As for Ning himself, he had been running around with the young master all night and was almost starving. He didn't care about so much eating the bread with sawdust, and Ning couldn't help but think of the famous scene in the Iron Teeth and Bronze Teeth. Hessian and the adults said to Zyalin, "Have you seen hungry people? Hungry people are no longer human beings. Bran is a good thing. They are satisfied as long as they have it to eat." And Ning is not yet at the point where he has to compete with livestock for feed, but it is almost there. The hard bread with sawdust tastes quite fragrant in his mouth. Of course, it is also possible that Ning's body has become accustomed to this kind of coarse grain. However, the young master Klotz of the Delestal family did not have this blessing. He tried to eat another bite of bread, but ended up vomiting it all out again. "This bread has a strange taste." Klotz complained, "How can you eat this?" And Ning, "In fact, the bread provided by the army is not much better than this. It tastes like wood. If you want to swallow it better, you can only soak it in vegetable soup and eat it." And Ning recalled the military memories of others, and then advised, "You should eat a little. If you don't have anything in your stomach, you won't have the strength to walk. If you are caught by the Prussians, you can only be a prisoner." In fact, and Ning thought that it was okay for nobles to be prisoners. After all, they were nobles. The Prussians would treat them well if they were caught. At most, they would ask the Duke of Orleans for a ransom. However, Klotz shook his head. "I can't be a prisoner. Everyone in the club will look down on me." Club. And Ning couldn't help but frown. This was a very unfamiliar word for Andy Frost, the son of a leatherworker. After all, Andy Frost only had the little knowledge he learned when he went to the church Sunday school when he was a child. At best, he could only recognize the few words on his own order. The sophisticated word club has nothing to do with a rough cobbler. But Ning is different now. He not only knows the word club, but also knows that it is something that has become popular in France recently. With the spread of Enlightenment thought in France is now in a state of 100 schools of thought. The emerging intellectual class has formed various clubs in Paris around different thoughts. When the Great Revolution broke out, these clubs were the prototypes of various factions later. For example, the Jacobins were originally the Brittany Club, composed of a group of intellectuals in Brittany, and later gradually evolved into the Jacobin Friends of Freedom and Equality. It seems that Klotz has also joined a club, and being captured on the battlefield will make him lose face in front of his colleagues in the club. Damn it, and Ning thought, I risked my life to save you, but it was just to save your reputation in the club. People like you who don't have to worry about being abused should just bear it honestly, bastard. Of course, and Ning didn't say this out loud. He had already finished his half-piece of bread, but his still empty stomach made him think about the half-piece of bread in Kratz's hand. "Ning, my little master, if you can't eat the food of the rough people, give it to me, so that I can carry you on my back when we escape." Kratz looked at the bread in his hand, with a determined expression. "No, I want to eat, I must return home alive. I have troubled you too much?" He tore off a piece of bread with a resolute look and stuffed it into his mouth. While chewing the bread, Kratz's face was like an ascetic on the road to pilgrimage. At this moment, Ning suddenly heard the sound of horse hoofs. He immediately stood up, grasped the saber borrowed from Kratz, and stared at the direction of the sound with vigilance. The cavalry arrived in a blink of an eye. From a modern perspective, this group of cavalry seemed to be not wearing clothes properly, wearing half of the top and the other half as a cloak. But Ning knew that this was the standard attire of the current hussars. The hussars originated in Hungary, and the first hussars of various countries were basically Hungarians, so they inherited the traditional Hungarian costumes. The jacket that is worn half unbuttoned and half unbuttoned as a cloak is called a pelisse, which is generally translated as leather jacket, but when this word appears with dolman, it refers to the traditional outfit of Hungarians. Because the hussars of various countries all wear this outfit, the hussars of different countries are generally distinguished by the color of their uniforms. Ning recognized that this team was the French hussars by the color. But Ning did not relax. Because he knew that the hussars generally had paramilitary discipline, and they might kill Ning as a deserter in order to plunder money. Chapter 5 Encounter with the Hussars. The desire to fight in the army in this era, or subjective initiative, was very low. Most conscripts had no concept of a nation-state, nor did they want to get ahead through military exploits. They were just forced to go to the battlefield by the nobles, and were cannon fodder in the true sense. One of the main reasons why they had to line up in dense formations and shoot in a line in this era was that once the conscripts with low desire and low morale disbanded the dense formation, or even if they were a little far away from the officers, they would immediately collapse. Arms such as skirmishers and hussars, which required relatively high subjective initiative, either had paramilitary discipline and were involved in eating, drinking, whoring and gambling, or were simply conscripted bandits who went to the battlefield to rob and make a fortune. So even though he saw clearly that the French hussars were coming, Ning did not dare to neglect them at all. He was carrying the spoils of the bandit leader he killed last night, and maybe he was just a fat sheep in the eyes of the hussars. As for the young master, the hussars might not dare to openly kill the noble lords on their side, but what if they wanted to take credit for Ning's work? As the hussars approached, Ning saw the half-moon-shaped dog tag on the leader's neck, which meant that he was an officer, possibly a noble. This made Ning feel a little relieved. The young master of the Delestal family obviously didn't have so many thoughts. When he saw his own hussars coming over here, he stood up and waved happily. The cavalry soon arrived. The leading officer stopped in front of Kratz, who was waving at him. Without even looking at Ning, he spoke directly. "The 20th Hussar Regiment, under the order of General Carnegie, is conducting reconnaissance. How is the situation?" Ning had no impression of this General Carnegie. As for French generals, he only knew about the marshals who came after Napoleon. Kratz shook his head. "It's terrible. We were defeated by Frederick and Rossbach. He led the army in person. Damn it." Ning couldn't help but frown. He vaguely remembered that Frederick II died of old age in 1786. Frederick II in 1780 should be an old man who couldn't move. How could he lead the army in person? Could it be that Frederick the Great in this time and space was born a few years later? So the history of this world is only roughly the same as the original history, but the specific details are misplaced? However, Ning was not the kind of person who specialized in history. He only recognized the famous generals, marshals, and those who were in history textbooks in this era. So the misplacement of historical details did not make much difference to Ning. At this time, the hussar officer asked again, "Where are the Prussians? This morning we started from Koroba village and searched all the way here, and we didn't see even a single Prussian." Kratz looked at Ning and cast a look for help. Ning pointed to the direction they came from and said, "Go in this direction, and you will see the Prussian camp in about 20 miles. In fact, Ning didn't know how far he ran last night, so he just made up a number. Anyway, cavalry ran fast, and if he ran along the way he came last night, he would probably meet the Prussian reconnaissance cavalry soon. The officer looked at the direction Ning pointed, nodded slightly, and then pointed to the direction they came from and said, If you go in this direction, you will meet General Carnegie's Third Army at noon. He is gathering the troops that were scattered yesterday to organize defense." After saying that, the officer was about to lead the team to leave. And Ning hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed his reins and said, "Wait a minute. Sir, our young master has a leg injury and can't walk that far. Can you send 2 people to ride horses to take us to the military camp?" In fact, the young master didn't have a leg injury, but after a night of escape, he probably had a few blisters on his feet, so he limped when he walked, and it probably wouldn't be a big deal if he said he was injured. As long as the young master doesn't expose Ning's lies, it's fine. He wouldn't be so stupid, right? And Ning was grumbling in his heart while looking at the young master. As a result, he hesitated for a moment, and finally lowered his head, which was regarded as tacitly agreeing with Ning's statement. It seems that he also wants to ride a horse and be lazy, and does not want to walk alone. However, the cavalry officer shook his head. "We still have to scout, and we may encounter Prussian cavalry on the road, and there will be a battle. I need every soldier to carry out the mission with me. If you know German, you can find farmers to hire ox carts. That's it. I wish you good luck." The cavalry officer saluted Ning and the others, and then led his subordinates to gallop in the direction Ning had just pointed. And Ning looked at Kratz and said, "Shall I rent an ox cart? Please." Kratz sighed. Sitting on the ox cart, Ning was finally able to relax a little. He had been running with someone all night, and now he could finally sit down and rest. As soon as he sat down, he felt the accumulated fatigue burst out, making him want to lie down directly on the ox cart and have a good sleep. But he didn't dare to sleep, because the young master he brought was not reliable at all. As soon as Kratz sat on the ox cart, he immediately slumped down. He looked at Ning and said, "Finally, I can take a break, Mr. Frost." It seemed that the young master had already put his mind at ease. And Ning couldn't help but remind him, "We haven't reached our army yet, so it's not time to relax, Mr. Turlistel." "I know. But it's strange, I always feel that as long as you are here, Mr. Frost, everything will be fine." Just as the young master said this, a line of words suddenly refreshed on the task prompt on the right side of Ning's vision. Complete the additional task goal, raise Kratz to Turlistel's favorability to trust. Get a reward of 50 crowns, which can be withdrawn at any bank. And Ning was shocked. He thought that this task system would at most give him some intangible rewards such as reputation, but he didn't expect that there would be direct physical rewards 50 crowns. Let's put it this way, Ning bought food and water from this old German farmer and hired him to give up a whole day of farm work and use the ox cart to take him and the young master to find the French army, and it only cost a crown of silver coin in total. And from the smile on the old farmer's face, Ning saw that this crown was too much. Calculated in this way, 50 crowns is a huge sum of money. The spoils that he got from killing a bandit leader yesterday might not even be worth 50 crowns. What's the point of collecting spoils? The right way to make a fortune is to complete tasks honestly. Ning looked at the young master again, and his eyes were like looking at a hen that lays golden eggs. At this time, the young master said again, "After the Prussians defeated us yesterday, they might continue to march to attack General Carnegie's Third Army. We should be able to catch up with the battle." And Ning thought to herself, "No, I don't want to fight anymore. I want to send you back to your father safely and get the reward." Klotz looked at Ning. "What do you think? If you participate in the battle again, are you willing to be my bodyguard? With you by my side, I will definitely be able to." And Ning, Mr. Turlistel, "I think the Prussians may not continue to tangle with us. After all, their enemies are not only us, but also Emperor Leopold of the Habsburgs, and the Russians from the east." And Ning vaguely remembered that the 7 Years' War in another time and space was a battle between Prussia and Britain and the Franco-Austrian-Russian coalition. Britain and Prussia are allies, but the British did not seem to contribute much in mainland Europe, and they mainly fought hard with France overseas. Of course, the details of the history of this time and space are different in many places, so Ning can't go into details, and can only talk about the general direction. If I were the Emperor of Prussia, I would not delay in one direction for too long, giving opponents the opportunity to encircle and always maintain my initiative. And Ning said so. Kratz looked thoughtful. "You mean, we are unlikely to encounter an attack from the main force of the Prussian army next?" And Ning spread his hands. "I am just the son of a cobbler, and my words don't count. The son of a cobbler can speak German." Kratz looked straight at Ning, "And I noticed that you can read the road signs, which means you know German." It's hard to imagine that you know German but not French. As a cobbler's child, you have received too good an education. Ning, my family is in Scene, where there are many people who can speak German and English. It doesn't hurt to know more languages. In fact, this statement is very fake at first glance, because Scene is actually far away from the German-speaking area, and there are not many people who speak German and Dutch. In addition, German and French are not on the same language family. French is a Romance language, and German is a Germanic language. For people who speak French as their mother tongue, it may be easier to learn Italian, and vice versa. So Napoleon, who was born in Corsica, quickly mastered French and entered the French military academy. But German is different. It is not an easy thing for the son of a cobbler who only goes to Sunday school at the Catholic Church on Sundays to learn German. However, the young master obviously did not think much about it and believed it directly. Sure enough, the young master's favorability towards Ning has reached the level of trust. At this time, Klotz's attention was focused on the war again. The Prussian army will not continue to fight with us. Damn it, what if the Russian army or the Habsburg army defeats Prussia and the war ends like this? I must make meritorious deeds. Ning, master, why are you so obsessed with making meritorious deeds? You are the heir of the Duke of Orleans. Even if you can't inherit the title, you still have a bright future. Because I want to go to military school to continue my studies. The young master replied, so I must make meritorious deeds in the war to get a medal. Ning raised his eyebrows and thought to himself that it didn't make sense. Isn't it easy for aristocratic children to go to military school? They don't have to make meritorious deeds. Doesn't the Duke of Orleans support his son to go to military school? Ning was about to ask a question when Crozier, who had been mumbling all the time, suddenly leaned over and leaned on Ning's shoulder. Ning lowered her head and found that the young master had closed his eyes. Although he was still mumbling, his eyelids could no longer be opened. A moment later, Crozier fell asleep, snoring softly. Ning could only swallow her doubts. Chapter 6: The Suspicious Points about the Young Master. After a while, Ning suddenly felt something leaning against his shoulder. He turned his head and found that it was Klotz's head. Damn it, it's not fun to have a man leaning on my shoulder. Ning thought so and pushed the young master's head away, but when he touched Klotz's shoulder, he suddenly felt doubtful. Are this guy's shoulders too narrow? Ning muttered, pressing Klotz's shoulders with his hands on the left and right. Obviously, as a man's shoulder, the shoulder width is not enough. Once the doubt arises, everything in Ning's eyes suddenly becomes suspicious. For example, Klotz's smooth chin. Ning himself is the type of person whose beard grows quickly. If he doesn't shave for a day, his hand will feel obviously hairy when touched. But Klotz's chin feels smooth and not prickly at all. Even if he is young, it shouldn't be so smooth, right? Ning glanced at the old German farmer driving the car in front, and after making sure that the other side was not paying attention to the back, he gently checked Klotz's chest muscles. Is this considered hard or soft? Even if it's a girl, she might have a flat chest. As expected, I can only confirm it directly. Klotz's lower body is wearing tight trousers that are common among nobles. The length of the trousers just reaches the knees, and the legs below the knees are wrapped in white stockings. From the perspective of the future, if this outfit is worn on a woman, it would be quite sexy. It's a pity that women in this era don't wear it like this. Instead, all noble gentlemen wear tight trousers and stockings. And white stockings. Ning stared at Klotz's trousers and thought that if it was a man, the shape of the trousers would be too flat. But isn't it a bit too much to confirm it directly? What if the person just wakes up? I just completed the additional task goal and raised Klotz's favorability to trust. The reward of 50 crowns is still in the bank and I haven't taken it yet. In order to satisfy my curiosity, I lost all my favorability in one day. Isn't it a bit of a loss? If I pretend that I didn't notice anything here, there will be no negative effects. The only problem is that I can't satisfy my curiosity. Besides, if Klotz is really a woman, I will have plenty of opportunities to find out later. He can't possibly not go to the toilet, right? After making up his mind, Ning suppressed his curiosity and pretended not to notice anything. Just at this time, the old German farmer turned around and said to Ning in a heavily accented High German, "We will be out of the border of our lord's territory if we go further. Although I am not a serf, but..." Ning, you took a crown silver coin. Think about that silver coin. Think about its attractive luster. The old farmer thought about it, then drove the car forward. The German nobles should have carried out serfdom reforms under the leadership of Frederick II and Queen Teresa, and liberated some serfs. This old farmer was probably a serf of the lord when he was young, and then he gained freedom. Now he still dare not easily cross the boundary line of the lord's land. The ox cart swayed across the boundary line of the territory. And Ning saw a protruding stone pier on the side of the road, and guessed that it was a boundary marker. He didn't know whether it was a boundary marker or not. Not far after the boundary marker, the ox cart passed a group of fleeing soldiers wearing the white uniforms of the French army. One of the fleeing soldiers rolled up a flag covered with irises, used the flagpole as a crutch, and limped along. The soldier saw the ox cart and immediately opened his mouth to say something, but then he saw Ning and Master Kratz on the ox cart. He stared at Kratz's half-moon dog tag, and finally curled his lips and looked away. And Ning guessed that the soldier wanted to take a ride, but hesitated when he saw the officer. After all, it was 1780, and the revolution had not yet broken out. The officer still had some prestige among ordinary people. When the French sent Louis XVI to the guillotine, it was hard to say whether the half-moon dog tag of the noble master would have such a great deterrent effect. The ox cart creaked and drove past the demoralized fleeing soldiers. Most of the fleeing soldiers chose to remain silent after seeing Kratz's dog tag, and did not ask for a ride. Finally, iris flags began to appear in front of the ox cart. And Ning stretched his neck and looked forward. It seemed that the French troops ahead were building defense facilities relying on the hill. Closer, on the dirt road, an officer was standing by the roadside, shouting to the soldiers walking along the dirt road, "The defeated soldiers come here to register, those who can't write go over there and report their names to the clerk, and those who can write come here to register." And Ning raised his voice, "Mr. Officer, my master is Kratz de Telestal, the son of the Duke of Orleans." In fact, and Ning should also report his identity, Andy Frost, a military musician of the 17th Battalion of the 21st Infantry Regiment of Seine. But he didn't want to be separated from the young master, so he deliberately concealed his identity and didn't report it, so that everyone would naturally think that he was Telestal's orderly. Judging from the literal meaning of his mission, he had to send the young master to the Duke before he was considered finished. And Ning would never allow this mission to fail because he was separated from the young master in advance. The officer came to the ox cart, held the railing of the ox cart and looked up. When he saw Kratz, who was still sleeping, he looked away. Kratz looked like an innocent young nobleman. It seemed that his identity was immediately recognized by the officer. The clerk in charge of registering the survivors of the nobles is in front. You don't have to walk too far to see him. Say hello to His Excellency the Marquis for me. The officer waved his hand. And Ning was a little confused. His Excellency the Marquis? At this time, he suddenly remembered that he seemed to have seen a saying somewhere that Europeans would honor the son of a duke as a marquis, and the son of a marquis as an earl, and so on. So Kratz should now be honored as the Marquis of Telestal because he is the son of the Duke of Orleans. And Ning couldn't help but hold his forehead. It seemed that he had never honored Kratz as the Marquis last night. But this guy's favorability towards him has reached the level of trust. He or she should not care about such details, right? While Ning was thinking about this, the officer who was gathering the fleeing soldiers asked him in confusion, "Do you have any more questions? Why don't you leave?" And Ning then remembered that the old farmer didn't understand French, so he ignored the officer's order to move forward. So Ning said to the old farmer in German, "Go forward and stop by the officer in front." "My friend," the officer who was gathering the fleeing soldiers said to Ning with a smile, "you speak High German well, and your accent seems to be very standard. It seems that the Duke has found a very reliable attendant for the Marquis." And Ning smiled in response. He was indeed regarded as Klotz's attendant. This is good. Just send Klotz back to his father as an attendant. Chapter 7, The Unexpected Return. The ox cart soon arrived in front of another group of clerks. "Hello," and Ning paid a little attention to the wording, "I am here to register with my boss, the Marquis of Telestal." Logically, it should be my master here, but Ning didn't say the word master. After all, Ning is a modern person, and comes from a country where kings, princes, generals and ministers are not of the same species. The resistance to calling a foreign kid master was greater than Ning expected. Fortunately, the clerk in charge of registration didn't pay much attention to Ning's stuttering. He looked down at his notebook and suddenly his expression changed. "You mean the Marquis of Telestal?" And Ning nodded, "Yes." "Great, General Carnegie is looking for the Marquis. Is the Marquis free now?" The general wants to see him. Up, the Marquis. And Ning was about to answer, and the young Master Kratz, who was still sleeping just now, sat up, raised his hands high and stretched his waist. When Ning saw him raise his hands, he thought he was habitually giving a French military salute. There was no way. People who came from the era of universal breastfeeding laws, some habits can't be changed all of a sudden. After yawning, Kratz noticed the registrar in front of him, and he immediately said excitedly, "I am Warrant Officer Kratz de Lestal. I can still continue to fight. Please put me in the infantry." And Ning's heart skipped a beat. He didn't want to be stuffed into the line infantry to charge on the front line again, so he wanted to interrupt Kratz's words reflexively. However, the clerk shook his head. "No, Your Excellency the Marquis, I'm afraid we can't let you join our infantry. The general is waiting for you." Kratz looked very disappointed. He muttered, "My father must have sent him a letter." And Ning listened calmly, praying in his heart that General Carnegie would send this Marquis, or the Marquisate, back to Paris. The clerk, "Corporal Jules, take them to see the general." A corporal saluted the clerk and turned to the ox cart. "This way, please." Kratz stood up on the ox cart and jumped to the ground lightly, but he almost fell down because he didn't stand firmly. And Ning, who got off the car first, hurried forward to support him, and his hand naturally wrapped around his waist. This made him feel that Kratz was a woman, because his waist was really too thin. "Kratz, thank you." "You're welcome." And Ning withdrew his hand after confirming that Kratz stood firmly. Corporal Jules looked down at Kratz's stockings and couldn't help but say, "Your Excellency the Marquis, it seems that you have suffered a lot." Kratz's stockings and tights were already dirty, especially the white stockings, which would become black stockings if they were any dirtier. Kratz smiled and said, "Fortunately, thanks to my attendant Andy, who is very capable." And Ning nodded. He didn't mind Kratz praising himself a few more times. In this way, he would have secured his position as an attendant and could escort him all the way back to the Duke. As they were talking, two French soldiers stepped forward and ordered the old farmer who had brought in Ning and the others, "You can leave now, turn around." The old farmer looked at the French soldiers with a puzzled look on his face. And Ning hurried forward and said in German, "You can leave now, thank you very much." The old farmer nodded, then put his hands together and said, "Good luck to you." And Ning couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, thinking that this old farmer not only helped the invading army, but also said good luck to the enemy. Sure enough, the national consciousness of Germany has not yet awakened, and fighting is only the business of nobles. After the old farmer drove the ox cart away, the clerk gave Ning a thumbs up. "You speak German well." Kratz, "Right, I think he speaks German very well too." The clerk looked at Kratz in confusion. Isn't he an attendant of the Duke's family? The implication is that you have no idea how well your attendant speaks German?" Kratz, "The entourage was chosen by my father. I didn't know about it in advance." "Is that so?" The clerk curled his lips, as if he didn't intend to continue to worry about these details. "Let's go quickly, don't keep the general waiting. He ordered us to confirm whether there is anyone named Telestal among the fleeing soldiers early this morning." Kratz pursed his lips. "Okay, lead the way, Corporal." The corporal named Jules nodded. "Come this way. It may take some distance." Under the guidance of Corporal Jules, and Ning and Kratz walked a long way and climbed up the small hill where the French army was deploying defenses, and then the view suddenly opened up. On the other side of the hillside was a large area of French army tents. In this era, the army had to set up camp, unlike the later army that would stay at the homes of ordinary people. Because of the need to set up camp, a large part of the army in this era was baggage personnel. For example, a French infantry regiment was composed of 3 battalions, one of which would be a reserve battalion, mainly responsible for chores such as setting up camp, and sometimes also responsible for guarding the tents. After the Great Revolution, the French army was reorganized because they did not need to camp on their own land, but stayed in the homes of fellow villagers. As a result, they had unparalleled mobility and were able to beat the armies of the European feudal lords at that time. Corporal Jules brought Ning and Kratz to the door of a tent with a general's flag at the door and shouted a report. A slow response came from the tent, "Come in." The corporal then lifted the curtain of the tent and went in, reporting loudly, "General, the Marquis of Telestal is outside the tent." "Oh." And Ning heard a surprised response from the tent, "Really? Great, let him in." The corporal immediately lifted the curtain of the tent. "Your Excellency, the Marquis, please come in." Kratz entered the tent with a reserved look on his face, and Ning followed him in, trying his best to act like a loyal guard. General Carnegie was a short man, and an exquisite vest came out from his open-chested military uniform. Although it was still morning, the general had already put on a white wig, looking like a toy tin soldier in full dress. He glanced at Kratz and immediately raised his voice, "Mr. Marcus, you look really bad. Those Prussian bumpkins didn't even let go of your wig." And Ning then noticed that Kratz didn't wear a noble wig. It made sense. Kratz crawled out of a pile of corpses, and most of the noble decorations and luxury goods were thrown away. Kratz looked a little embarrassed. "Yes, as you can see, I'm a little embarrassed. But I'm ready to go to the battlefield again." "Where are your saber and pistol?" the general interrupted Kratz and asked again. And Ning hurriedly took off his saber and pistol and handed them to the general. "Here." "Kratz, I was attacked by bandits. They were looting our dead soldiers on the battlefield. And he defeated them." "General Carnegie, with your knife and gun? Where is his own gun?" And Ning thought to himself, "I don't have a gun. I'm just a drummer." And Ning, report to the general, "I was knocked down by a shell, and I dropped my gun at that time." General Carnegie nodded, then gently pushed away the saber and pistol handed over by Ning. "Take these, you have protected your master very well." And Ning took back the knife and gun. Kratz stepped forward and said to the general with a slightly trembling voice, "General, please allow me to join your infantry unit." And Ning thought to himself, "No, I don't want to go back to that hell." General Carnegie shook his head and interrupted Kratz. No, I received a letter from your father, Duke Louis de Lestal, and the Duke hopes that I will send you back to Paris immediately after I find you." And Ning secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then he couldn't help but complain about the Duke's full name in his heart. And Ning remembered that in his original time and space, the Duke of Orleans before the Revolution should be called Louis de Philippe. After the Revolution, as an enlightened aristocrat who was inclined to revolution, he decided to change himself to a more revolutionary name, and changed his name to Philippe Equality. That's right, the Duke of Orleans' last name was Equality from that time on. I wonder if Mr. Tolstoy will also change his last name to Equality in this parallel universe. While Ning was complaining in his heart, General Carnegie stared at Kratz and said, "So I can't let you join my army. I will send 100 cavalrymen to escort you back to Paris." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8. What? There is a double mission reward? Kratz, how can this be? I haven't made any contributions yet. General Carnegie glanced at Kratz. This is easy. I can sign an order right now to give you a Legion of Honor medal to reward your bravery in the previous battle. Kratz was stunned for a moment, then immediately objected. How can this be? What are you rewarding me for? Reward me for crawling out of the corpse? You might as well reward my follower Andy. Of course he will be rewarded. General Carnegie glanced at Ning. Andy Frost was awarded the Legion of Honor Officer Medal for his heroic actions in rescuing the Marquis of Tillistal. I think both applications should be approved. Kratz, how can it be approved? We just... Ning, because we lost the war, Your Excellency the Marquis, we need to introduce some heroes to distract the public's attention. Kratz turned his head to look at Ning with an unbelievable look on his face. How can this be? Ning stepped forward and patted Kratz's shoulder. You wanted merit, and now you have it. Continuing to fight in the army may not necessarily lead to better results, and to be honest, the Prussian army is now unstoppable, and continuing to fight them may not necessarily win. After all, it was Frederick II's Prussian army. If Ning remembered correctly, during the 7 Years' War on the European continent, Frederick II beat Russia, France and Austria with his fists, just like Nima was on fire. Of course, one of the main reasons why Frederick II could be so powerful was that there was a German Tsar in Russia. Peter II himself was a German, and he couldn't even speak Russian when he was a child. Kratz looked at Ning. You think I should go back to Paris, right? Ning nodded. Yes, you should go back. What about you? Kratz asked again. Ning, of course I will escort you back. Kratz sighed. Okay, since you think so, then I will go back. Are you sure my medal will be approved? I'm sure. Ning nodded. Seeing that Ning had convinced Kratz, General Carnegie took over the conversation again. I will send a messenger to deliver the letter of awarding the medal back to Paris. The cavalry to escort you will be dispatched in the afternoon. During this time, Mr. Marcus, you should tidy yourself up. Your father will blame me if you return to Paris in such an undignified state. Krotz looked down at his dirty body and blushed for a moment. Sorry to trouble you. The general snapped his fingers, and his orderly immediately stepped forward and said to Krotz and Ning, please come here to change your clothes. After that, Ning changed his clothes, took a shower, and then put on a brand new squire's jacket. By the way, he also got a pair of tight trousers and a pair of white stockings. As for shoes, it was the pair of boots he brought back from the battlefield last night. According to the general's orderly, these boots are better than the boots of ordinary noble lords, so just wipe off the mud spots on them. After getting dressed, Ning finally felt that he had crawled out of the dead pit yesterday. When Ning came out of the tent dressed, the general's orderly led 2 horses, pointed to the luggage bag on one of the saddles and said, Mr. Frost, your luggage is all in this luggage bag. This luggage is obviously referring to the things that Ning looted from the bandit leader yesterday. Orderly, we have collected the several noble identity cards you carried with you as relics of fallen soldiers, and everything else is intact. Ning nodded, thank you, it's a great help. In addition, we have also issued you weapons and equipment commensurate with your status, which are all on the saddle. Please return the saber of Marcus Telestal to him later. Ning originally wanted to say that it was quite convenient to use the young master's saber yesterday, but it was not very good for a follower to hold the officer's saber. At this time, Krotz Telestal came out of another tent. He also changed into a new military uniform, which looked clean and refreshing. The tight trousers and white stockings on his lower body were spotless. Ning stared at Krotz's lower body, always having the illusion that he was showing off his white stockings. Damn, is this young master a woman? With this question, Ning carefully observed the young master's chin, and sure enough, there was not even a stubble. It must feel very smooth. Krotz met Ning's gaze, smiled slightly and said, Andy, you look much better. You too, my lord Marcus. Don't call me your excellency the Marcus. Just call me Krotz as before. The young master said with a smile, you saved my life. When we return to Paris, I will ask my father to reward you. Please, that's in my favor. Ning thought. Then he suddenly thought of something. He would get a system reward for completing the task, and if Krotz asked his father for another reward, wouldn't that be a double reward? One reward from the Duke and one from the system. It would be quite cool. At this time, a team of dragoons drove over. The leading officer stopped in front of Ning and Krotz and asked loudly, who is the Marquis of Telestal? Krotz raised his hand, it's me. The officer saluted him, hello, Your Excellency the Marquis, I am here on the orders of General Carnegie to escort you back to Paris. Krotz, are we leaving now? Of course, now that the Prussians have disappeared, it's time to leave. If we don't leave now, we may face harassment from the Prussian hussars on the road when the two sides come into contact. Our horses are not as good as the hussars, it will be very troublesome, the officer said loudly. Dragoons are basically infantrymen who act on horseback. When fighting, they often dismount and fight as infantry. Therefore, the horses of the dragoons are relatively poor horses, which are incomparable to the horses of the hussars, who are the main force of reconnaissance and harassment. Krotz nodded, okay, let's set off now. Carnegie's orderly immediately said, your horse is here, we have prepared rations for you for the next few days, and they are placed on the saddle. Of course, there is also water. Thank the general for me. As Krotz said this, he took the reins from the orderly and climbed onto the horse. Ning also got on the horse. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to ride a horse. After all, in this time and space, he was just the son of a leather worker and his position in the army was a drummer. In theory, he didn't need to master any horse riding skills. But Ning got on the horse very smoothly, and he felt like an old rider. Maybe his FPS system has built-in riding skills. Krotz looked at Ning's horse mounting movements and exclaimed, Andy, you look better at riding than I do. Ning perfunctorily said, as the son of a leather worker, I have ridden cows. Krotz was stunned. At this time, the dragoon officer came over to rescue Ning. You two, get ready and let's go. If we set off faster now, we can stay in Capo village at night. Krotz nodded, okay, let's go. Chapter 9, First Arrival in Paris. The journey back to Paris was more peaceful than expected. The only test came from Ning's butt. Riding for a long time was a terrible torture for Ning's butt. On the second day, Ning found blood when he defecated. Obviously, the close contact and wear with the saddle made him suffer from hemorrhoids early. Fortunately, the situation was not too serious, and it was not to the point where Manglong was needed, so Ning endured it. In order to distract himself, Ning began to observe Master Krotz more carefully. He soon found that the young master's chin was suspiciously smooth, and he always used clothes to cover his Adam's apple. Ning increasingly suspected that Krotz was actually a woman. Why did the daughter of the Duke of Orleans dress up as a man and go to the battlefield? Puzzled, he asked many questions about women going to the battlefield while chatting with others. The results surprised him. He found that France in this time and space actually had a tradition of women going to the battlefield because of the influence of Joan of Arc. And some poor nobles, because they didn't want to pay dowry, would let their daughters go to military school and serve in the army like men. In the previous time and space, in order to avoid dowry, poor French nobles would send their daughters to a monastery and let them serve God for the rest of their lives. In this time and space, it is changed to let daughters be loyal to the country like Joan of Arc and win glory and rewards. But the Duke of Orleans is not a poor noble. Ning remembered that the Duke of Orleans in the previous time and space was an enlightened noble who had long been asset-oriented and very rich. Obviously, the daughter of the Duke of Orleans did not need to join the army to avoid dowry expenses. The only explanation is that Krotz, who knows what her real name is as a daughter, did not want to get married too early, so she disguised herself as a man and joined the army, trying to gain merit to prove herself. In any case, when we arrived in Paris and met the Duke of Orleans, we should know whether Ning's speculation was right. 10 days after leaving the front line, Ning finally saw the outline of Paris. Originally, Ning thought that the city of Paris in this era was at most like a larger county town, and he never expected that the city of Paris in this era had such a scale. He stood on the high ground downstream of the Seine River, overlooking the entire city, and could not see the edge of the city at a glance. Moreover, there are a large number of buildings in the whole city, which looks like a large area of gray. The messy bungalows on the edge of the city look very much like the slums of Rio de Janeiro in the future. The road into the city is full of merchants' carriages, fully loaded with goods. Klotz seemed very satisfied with Ning's surprise. He asked with a slightly proud tone, "Is it your first time in Paris?" And Ning nodded, "Yes, first time. Everyone who comes here for the first time will be shocked. After all, this is the largest city in the whole of France, and there are millions of people living here." And Ning curled his lips and thought, "What's the big deal? I have seen super cities with tens of millions of people living together." But there is no need to argue with Klotz at this time, so he pretended to be convinced and said, "It's amazing. Klotz, you probably can't imagine that we have to walk for more than an hour after entering the city to get to my father's property, the royal palace. Don't be scared by the crowd when entering the city." And Ning, "Okay, I try my best." He didn't have anything else to say except "I'll try my best." "I can't tell Klotz, I've been through a lot on Guangzhou Metro Line 3, and I've seen all kinds of crowds. Paris originally had city walls, but the city gradually expanded beyond the walls, so in the Louis XIV era, the Sun King ordered the demolition of the old city walls, and then built a circle of roads for soldiers to patrol according to the outline of the existing city as city walls. But then the city soon expanded beyond the roads, and Paris became a city without city walls. Of course, there are still some city walls and fortresses in the original city center and the Ile de France of Paris, but they have long lost their protective capabilities. Now in the entire city of Paris, there are only a few fortress-style buildings such as the Bastille. Paris now is a city without city gates, and the division between the city and the suburbs has become very blurred. People like Ning who entered the city for the first time don't even know when they have been in the 48th district of Paris. But this is not a new experience for Ning. After all, the edges of large cities in later generations are also very blurred, and it is difficult to distinguish between cities and suburbs. Ning rode a horse and followed the dragoons through the streets of Paris. What surprised Ning was that the sanitary conditions of the streets were much better than he had imagined. Before Ning traveled through time, he had read a joke that said that the reason why European nobles liked to wear stockings and high heels was mainly because the streets were too dirty and full of rice fields. Now it seems that this is obviously a misunderstanding. If you think about it carefully, Paris in 1780 should have built a relatively complete sewer system, And it is unlikely that there would be rice fields everywhere. It is not India, and everyone is used to urinating and defecating everywhere. But the streets in Paris are still quite dirty. When horses move on the cobblestones, the mud spots splash are not much less than when they are in the wild. And there is a strange smell on the streets, which smells like a shirt that has not been washed for a long time. When Ning looked at everything in Paris, Klotz suddenly turned his head and said to him, "The Seine River is in front of us. You can see Notre Dame on the other side of the river across the river. You will be shocked." And Ning thought to himself, "No, I won't, because I have seen it in the game Assassin's Creed Unity. I have climbed it, in the game." As they were talking, the horse team turned a corner and began to move along the bank of the Seine. And Ning couldn't help but frown. Because the Seine was a little dirty beyond imagination, the whole river was filled with the smell of domestic garbage. When Ning was a child, he smelled the same smell on the banks of the Pearl River, which had never been treated for sewage. Come to think of it, the domestic garbage and feces and urine of millions of people in the city were poured into the Seine, so it was normal to have this smell. It was a pity that Ning had a little beautiful fantasy about the Seine, but now it was completely disillusioned. Klotz glanced at Ning and also showed an apologetic expression. I know the smell is a bit unpleasant. I'll take you to the upper reaches of the river for an outing in a while. The river is smelly and the scenery on both sides is also very beautiful." And Ning nodded, "Please." At this time, the horse team turned another corner, and Klotz pointed to the building in front and said, "That's the Royal Palace, my home. My father recently decided to open the garden of the Royal Palace to the public, so you will see many cafes and galleries, and many gentlemen and ladies will come here to attend salons in the afternoon." And Ning said, "Oh." He knew that the Royal Palace was an important public space for Parisians in this era, but he didn't know that it was open to the public by the Duke of Orleans. As they were talking, the horse team drove into the Royal Palace and stopped in front of a grand building. An old butler and a group of servants were already waiting here. Klotz turned over and got off the horse, turned back and said to Ning, "Come on, I'll take you to see my father." Chapter 10, The Intersection of History. And Ning followed Klotz and entered a typical Rococo-style lobby. This style was developed during the Louis XV era and is the latest popular style. Considering the time when the royal palace was built, the owner of the palace must have spent a lot of energy on renovating the palace to keep it fashionable. As soon as they entered the palace, a short and fat nobleman came down from the second floor and said to the people around him as he walked, "That Austrian woman, the news of the disastrous defeat on the front line can't stop him from holding court banquets. I must criticize her extravagance in the latest pamphlet." And Ning raised her eyebrows, thinking that Austrian woman probably refers to Louis XV's Queen Marie Antoinette. Klotz stepped forward and stretched out his hands to the short and fat nobleman who came downstairs. "Count Mirabeau, hello. Long time no see." And Ning couldn't help but look at this short and fat nobleman carefully. This turned out to be Mirabeau, a famous politician in the future, the leader of the constitutional monarchy after Lafayette lost power. Mirabeau was stunned for a moment, staring at Klotz for several seconds before he suddenly realized, "Oh, it's you, Miss Telestal." "Oh no, Mr. Telestal, Your Excellency the Marquis, I heard that you went to the front line." "Yes, I just came back from the front line." "Is it bad?" "It's terrible. I only saved my life thanks to Mr. Andy Frost." Klotz turned around and smiled at Ning. Mirabeau glanced at Ning, and seemed to tilt his head to recall something, probably wondering which noble family Ning was from. And Ning stepped forward and introduced himself. "I am Andy Frost, the son of a leatherworker." Mirabeau exclaimed, "The son of a leatherworker?" He looked down at Ning's chaps and stockings. Only nobles would wear chaps and stockings, and the son of a leatherworker would obviously not wear them like this. And Ning was about to explain when Klotz said, "Andy can speak German. It was thanks to him that we were able to escape from the battlefield." Mirabeau raised his eyebrows. "German? A cobbler's son can speak German." And Ning, "Well, there are many German-speaking people living over there, so I learned a little in Sunday school." At this time, the person behind Mirabeau stepped forward. "Maybe his hometown is closer to Alsace and Lorraine, where many people speak German." "Hello, I am Antoine Lavoisier, a friend of the Duke." And Ning was startled, and suddenly felt as if she had wandered into history. All of a sudden, she met two famous figures in history. Lavoisier, the father of modern chemistry. I remember that Lavoisier was sent to the guillotine during the French Revolution. I wonder if I can interfere with his fate a little. And Ning held a hand that Lavoisier extended. "Hello, Mr. Lavoisier, I have heard of you. You discovered oxygen. Lavoisier was surprised. Really? I thought my scientific discovery was only popular as a topic of conversation in the salons of Paris. And Ning, why are you here? Because His Excellency the Duke of Orleans is also my sponsor, Count Mirabeau, and I have received considerable sponsorship from His Excellency the Duke. But I don't come to His Excellency the Duke as often as Mirabeau. Crotts, Mr. Lavoisier occasionally gives us lectures and conducts some interesting experiments. Only occasionally. As they were talking, a middle-aged noble in a formal dress appeared at the top of the stairs. Let me see who is back. Crotts looked up and immediately opened his arms and ran upstairs. Dad, I'm back. And Ning looked up at the picture of father and daughter hugging each other on the stairs, and carefully observed the Duke of Orleans. The Duke of Orleans, Telestal, was a sturdy man, wearing a long red coat on his upper body, and a green riding jacket was faintly visible under the coat. Compared to the Duke, Klotz was a whole circle smaller. When the Duke hugged him, it was like hugging a dove returning to its nest. My dear Christina, you are finally back. The Duke probably didn't even notice that Ning, an outsider, was present, and he called Klotz by his real name. Klotz, Christina immediately frowned. Dad, my comrades are still here. And Ning stepped forward. Well, I have discovered your identity a long time ago, Klotz. After all, you never need to shave. Christina turned back and glared at Ning, her face flushed. You actually discovered it a long time ago. I was trying hard to keep the secret. The Duke laughed. Ha ha ha. Didn't you hear what this gentleman said? If you want to keep the secret, you have to grow a beard. Christina pouted, then said seriously, Dad, I won merit on the battlefield. General Carnegie said that he would apply for a Legion of Honor medal for me. Now I can go to the military school in Brienne, right? And Ning thought, it was indeed the case. This guy disguised himself as a man and went to the battlefield just to get his father to agree to let him go to the military school. Wait, the military school in Brienne. This school sounds familiar. It seems to be the military school where Napoleon studied. It is now 1780, and Napoleon is only 11 years old. Theoretically, he should be about to enter the military academy in Brienne. Of course, there are some changes in the details of this time and space. For example, the 7 Years' War is only now being fought, and Frederick the Great can still lead the army in person. Maybe Napoleon's age will also change. The Duke was embarrassed. Christina, it is very troublesome to study in a military academy. You will be mixed with the daughters of those poor nobles. They all go there because their families can't afford the dowry. Christina interrupted her father. What's the matter? I don't care about these. I want to be a female general. I don't want to get married. The Duke sighed. Okay. If I don't agree, you might have to dress up as a man to join the army again. Okay, I promise you. When the military academy in Brienne recruits students this year, I will send you there. And Ning was a little surprised that the nobles in this time and space actually agreed to let their daughters join the army so easily. Even if it is because of the history of Joan of Arc. It seems that in this time and space, at least in France, the status of women is much higher than in the other original time and space. At this time, the Duke turned to Ning. You are Andy Frost, right? The son of a leatherworker. And Ning nodded. Yes, it is me, Your Excellency the Duke. The Duke put on a businesslike tone. Thank you very much for getting my daughter out of danger. If you want to open a leather goods store in Paris, I can provide you with a free storehouse. While the Duke was speaking, the mission target that had been lit on the right side of Ning's vision suddenly changed. The mission of escorting Telestal's offspring is completed, and the Duke of Orleans Louis de Philippe Telestal's favorability towards you has increased to friendly. You will receive a total bonus of 550 crowns. You can withdraw it at any bank. And Ning was overjoyed. 550 crowns. This is a lot of money. And the Duke also promised to give him a house to open a store. And Ning from the 21st century couldn't hold back when he heard that he was giving away a house for free, because he had been looking at houses and sighing in his previous life. But at this time, a new idea lingered in Ning's mind. At this time, Christina suddenly said, Dad, can I hire Andy as my follower? The Duke of Orleans shook his head and said to his daughter, No, our family has a professionally trained team of attendants. At this time, Ning said loudly, Your Excellency the Duke, after this war, I found that I have some talent in this area, so I want to enter the military academy in Brienne to continue my studies in the future. That's right, I want to go to the military academy and then cling to Napoleon's thigh. Chapter 11, Gaining a Foothold in Paris. As soon as Ning finished speaking, Mirabeau, who had been listening, agreed, "That's great. This way the young lady will have someone to take care of her at school. But Mr. Frost, how old are you this year? Are you over the admission age for the Brienne Military Academy?" It was the first time that Ning knew about the admission age for the Brienne Military Academy. He answered cautiously, "I'm 18 years old. The admission age for the Brienne Military Academy is..." Mirabeau waved his hand. 18 years old is no problem. The military academy accepts young people from 10 to 20 years old. Lavoisier shook his head. "If you're 18, wouldn't it be better to go directly to the military academy in Paris?" And Ning thought, "No, I'm going to Brienne to get close to the future French emperor. If I were stuffed into the Paris Military Academy now, I would have graduated by the time Napoleon was admitted to the Paris Military Academy." In response to Lavoisier's question, Christina replied, "He was just a military musician. If he goes directly to the Paris Military Academy, he probably won't be able to keep up, right?" And Ning nodded, "Yes, I'd better go to the military academy in Brienne to lay a good foundation first." Christina turned her head and begged the Duke of Orleans, "Dad, aren't you worried that I will learn bad things from the poor noble lady in the military academy? Wouldn't it be bad to let Andy watch me? He can write to you to report my situation in school." The Duke glanced at Ning and sighed, "Okay. But there are still a few months before the military academy in Brienne starts. It's not too late to talk about this later. The most important thing you should do now is to wash yourself well. I can smell the sour smell of sweat on you, which is not the smell of a noble lady." Christina said coquettishly, "Dad, don't talk nonsense. How can I smell sour? Okay, no. Let Mrs. Ellen take you to wash you well." Butler. The butler who had just greeted Ning and her party at the door appeared quietly. "Miss, please come this way." Christina glanced at Ning, then followed a butler. The Duke of Orleans turned his eyes to Ning. "It seems that my daughter trusts you very much?" And Ning nodded and said, "After all, I got her out of that hell of death." "Hell of death? How could you want to go back to that hell? I also have a leather handicraft factory in my business in Paris. You can go there to use your family expertise. Or you can bring your family in the countryside to Paris. I can provide a house for your family to open a store for free." And Ning thought, forget it. There are only 9 years left before the revolution. Opening a store in Paris at this time is obviously not a good choice. Although I don't want to take risks on the battlefield, it is more stable to stay in the army in the future than to be an ordinary citizen in Paris. And Ning, how should I put it? At that time, I really didn't want to go back to that kind of hell. But now thinking about it, I might have a certain talent in this area. Besides, it's getting harder and harder to make a living as a leather worker recently, because the raw materials are getting more and more expensive, and the taxes are getting more and more. The Duke of Orleans sighed, "There's nothing we can do about the high taxes. You may not know that the financial situation of the royal family has become unimaginably bad, and there's going to be a war again recently. In order to raise military expenses, the royal family has borrowed a large sum of money from every bank in Paris. Now no one knows how much debt the royal family has." And Ning asked tentatively, "So will a new 3-level parliament be convened soon to levy taxes?" Mirabeau and Lavoisier looked at Ning in surprise. Mirabeau exclaimed, "A son of a leather worker actually knows about the 3-level parliament." And Ning evaded, "I heard others talking about it in the tavern." Has it reached the time when people in taverns would talk about this? The Duke was amazed. There are indeed such rumors in the palace recently, but many people are doing their best to persuade the king not to do this. Marquis de Lafayette seemed to think that convening the 3-level parliament at this time would lead to France becoming a constitutional monarchy. Marquis de Lafayette was the French general who led the French army in the American War of Independence. After witnessing the process of the establishment of the Republic in the North American colonies, the Marquis seemed to have become a so-called liberal aristocrat and began to support the constitutional monarchy. In the first few months of the French Revolution, Marquis de Lafayette controlled the political power in Paris. Lavoisier exclaimed, "Constitutional monarchy is not a bad thing. My laboratory is surrounded by a large area of slums, and the people's living standards are getting worse and worse. I can see it clearly. This country has reached the point where it has to make changes." And Ning thought to herself that you are quite accurate in your prediction. Indeed, in a few years, this country will undergo earth-shaking changes. Duke of Orleans, change. The question is how to change? Like the Glorious Revolution in Britain? Or like the New World? And Ning glanced at the Duke. He remembered that in the original time and space, Duke Louis de Philippe of Orleans had the right to inherit the French throne. The Duke initially funded Mirabeau to write a pamphlet of royal scandals, mainly to build momentum for his own ascension. Unexpectedly, the Duke himself became a member of the Jacobin Club, and even changed his surname to Equality. Of course, these things may not necessarily happen to the Duke of Orleans in this time and space. After all, the Duke of this time and space's surname is Telestal instead of Philip, and it is difficult to say that they are the same person. The Duke criticized the recent court changes in the Palace of Versailles, and then changed the subject. Mr. Frost, you haven't decided on a residence in Paris yet, right? And Ning nodded. Yes, it hasn't been decided yet. Then I'll let the butler arrange accommodation for you, and you can take the time to tell us how you took my daughter out of danger. If you have to go out to do something, just say hello to the butler. You saved my daughter and are the benefactor of our family. Thank you very much for your hospitality. And Ning thanked him sincerely. The Duke added, by the way, if you want to change out of your military uniform, tell my butler and he will provide you with clean clothes. If you want to eat, tell the butler, it's all free. After the Duke finished speaking, Mirabeau said goodbye to the Duke. I still have to deliver the latest pamphlet to the printing office, so I'll leave first. Lavoisier also took over the conversation. I'm also returning to the laboratory. The Duke, looking forward to your new experimental results. Seeing that Mirabeau and Lavoisier had left, and Ning also said goodbye, then I'll go find the butler to take me to my residence. The Duke nodded. Just at this time, the butler returned to the room and said directly to Ning, Mr. Frost, please come this way. Chapter 12. As a respectable person in Paris, you should have a maid. The butler led Ning to an empty building on the side of the royal palace. This was originally the servants' residence of the royal palace. Recently, the Duke has reduced the number of servants, so it has been idle. The butler introduced to Ning, the bedding is all new, and there is a bathtub in the room, but you need to fetch water from the first floor to take a bath. And Ning nodded, I know, I can take care of myself. As for clothes, we have provided a set of spare clothes on your bed. You can change into them after you finish washing. But you still have to figure out your own clothes in the future. After all, the clothes in the Duke's mansion may not be suitable for your size. And Ning, okay, I will go to the street to buy myself some suitable clothes. The butler bowed slightly, then I will take my leave first. There will be a maid to clean your room every day. Please tell the maid if you have any needs. And Ning suddenly became excited, a real maid. But on second thought, this kind of maid is usually an aunt, and it is unlikely that there will be a young and beautiful blue-haired maid like in anime. The butler left soon after saying goodbye, and Ning was left alone in the room. He came to the window and opened it with force. Outside the window was the street surrounding the royal palace. The street was busy with cars and people, and everyone was in a hurry. A child with a backpack on his back was shouting on the street, come and see. The collection of the Queen's love affairs. The latest volume. You can take it home with just 3 sus. And Ning was shocked. He didn't expect that someone would actually sell the Queen's little yellow book on the street. Has the imperial power been so majestic in this era? He leaned out of the window and looked at the child who was selling it. As a result, he saw many children dressed in the same way, carrying big backpacks, coming out of the building next door. He took a closer look at the sign of the building next door, Green Jade Printing Bureau. Well, it turns out that the Queen's love affairs are printed here. So the spread of this thing is promoted by the Duke of Orleans behind the scenes? While Ning was observing, several people had already bought a booklet from the child who was selling it, and the yellow copper coins were happily put into the pockets by the children. At this time, the child saw Ning leaning his head out of the second floor, and shouted to him, Sir, are you interested in the Queen's love affairs? And Ning touched his pocket, took out 3 copper coins and threw them down. Thank you for your patronage. The child jumped lightly and threw the rolled-up booklet to the second floor. And Ning picked up the booklet, flipped it open and took a quick look, and found that compared with the pornographic articles in later generations, this one was too bland. If I need money, I can write a booklet for His Excellency the Duke to discredit the royal family. But Ning's demand for money is not great now. He still has 550 kronor for the task reward waiting to be collected. And Ning threw the Queen's pornographic booklet away and turned to go to the first floor to get himself some water. 10 minutes later, Ning filled a bathtub with warm water, then happily took off his clothes and laid down. The fatigue of the journey was suddenly stimulated. He leaned on the edge of the bathtub, and almost closed his eyes and fell asleep. An hour later, Ning, who had finally felt refreshed, came out of the bathtub, wiped herself dry, and began to put on her clothes. At this moment, there was a loud noise on the road outside, and people cried out in surprise. Ning ignored the fact that her clothes were half fallen, and hurried to the window to look out. It turned out that some cargo had fallen off a wine carriage. There were shattered wine barrels on the ground, and the wine in the barrels was spilled all over the ground. Passers-by who smelled the wine rushed over and tried to drink the wine from the ground. The coachman shouted, "Stop! This is the Viscount's wine. Get out of here!" The coachman shouted while raising his whip high, and tried his best to whip the people who were trying to steal the wine. As a result, it aroused even more violent resistance. People rushed onto the carriage and overturned more wine barrels. "Coachman, stop it! The Viscount will hang you bastards!" Then a sturdy man snatched the whip from the coachman's hand, grabbed the coachman's collar with his strong arms and lifted him up. "This is Paris. It's not the turn of a Viscount to act arrogantly." Ning looked at the sturdy man carefully. He was not wearing the noble's trousers, but a pair of patched black trousers and a dirty linen shirt. Ning estimated that he should be a worker in a nearby handicraft factory, an ordinary Parisian freeman. Later generations would call them sans-culottes. This sans-culottes man threw the coachman out of the carriage, and the citizens who swarmed up snatched all the wine of the Viscount, pushed the barrels off the carriage and smashed them to pieces, and then drank the wine inside. Ning was on the second floor, watching all this happen. The royal palace should be considered the core area of Paris, and such a thing happened. At this time, the Paris police appeared with whistles. The sans-culottes who were trying to grab the wine and liquor scattered all at once, leaving only a mess of carriages and broken barrels on the ground. The police only blew whistles to disperse the crowd and did not spend time arresting people. The groom had been stripped of most of his clothes. He stood up and roared at the police, "I demand their arrest. This is the Viscount's wine." The leading policeman patted the groom on the shoulder. "Tell your master, welcome to Paris." Ning curled his lips and muttered, "Welcome to Paris. It seems that the public security in Paris is not very good in this era." Thinking of this, Ning put on the replacement clothes provided by the Duke. There was a bronze mirror in his room, and Ning went to the bronze mirror and looked at himself in the mirror carefully. I still need a white wig." The Duke did not provide a wig, probably because the Duke's servants felt that the son of a leather worker did not need a noble thing like a wig. Ning could only comb her hair simply and tie a small braid. In this era, Europeans all tied braids, just like the Qing dynasty. After getting dressed, Ning decided to go out and collect his mission reward, a total of 550 kroner in cash. He just opened the door to go downstairs and almost bumped into a maid. The moment he saw the maid, Ning was stunned. He always thought that the maid who came to take care of him must be an old lady, but he didn't expect that the Duke would send a girl who looked like a teenager. The girl had brown and golden hair, most of which was covered by the French maid's bubble hat. The girl had some freckles on her rosy face, but this did not prevent her from being a beauty. When the maid saw Ning, she saluted respectfully and said, "Mr. Frost, the housekeeper arranged for me to take care of your daily life. If you need anything in the future, please tell me directly." Ning, they actually sent such a young maid. The girl frowned. "Why, do you think I'm too young and afraid that I can't serve you well?" No, I'm afraid that you serve too well, okay." Ning, no, I absolutely don't mean that. Being young is good, being young is very good." The girl asked with a stern face, "Are you going out?" Ning nodded, "Yes, I'm going out." "Will you come back tonight?" "Of course I'll come back. Then I'll make the bed for you and leave the door open for you. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." Ning, wait a minute. What should I call you? Usually you can just call me maid or hey. Is this some kind of humor? Ning, that's not good. My name is Andy Frost. Please tell me your name so it's easier to address you. Fanny Gray. Ning, Annie? Your name is very common. Fanny. Can't you pronounce the VA sound? Of course I can. Fanny, I'll remember it." Ning paused, and in order to quickly get over the embarrassment, he continued to ask, "Fanny, I have a question. Where's the bank nearby?" "Bank? Do you want to exchange coins or deposit and withdraw money?" If you just want to exchange the crown silver coins on you into so, just go to the bridge to find the Jewish merchant. And Ning thought for a while and replied, I will go to the bank where I deposit and withdraw money first, and then find the Jewish merchant to exchange coins. Fanny, well, maybe it's hard to explain to you who just came to Paris. I'll go inform the head maid and then lead the way. And Ning frowned slightly. Why did she feel that a country girl like her had just been despised by the Parisians? After the maid lifted her skirt and saluted, she turned around and went to ask the head maid for instructions, leaving Ning there. That's right, her master is the Duke, and she is just a guest living here. There is no need for her to be too polite to her. And Ning curled her lips and suddenly thought, when the revolution breaks out and she makes a name for herself, she wonders if the maid's attitude will change. Wait and see, I will show off my future fence-sitting skills and become a great benefactor of the revolution. While Ning was daydreaming, Fanny came back. Let's go, Mr. Frost. The head maid asked me to take you to the bank and buy you some suitable clothes. You have money, right? And Ning wanted to find a time to answer that he had no money to see how the maid would react. But before he could speak, the maid continued, forget it, the head maid will send someone to notify the tailor shop serving the Duke's family. After all, you are the lady's benefactor. It seems that the problem of clothes has been solved. Are you going to walk or take a cab? Fanny asked again. And Ning, is it far? A little. Then take a public carriage. Then wait here for a moment, I'll go and rent a carriage. Fanny knelt down and saluted, then turned and left. Chapter 13 Receive Mission Rewards. What Fanny found was a two-wheeled horse-drawn carriage, which was a small carriage that the driver would drive behind the carriage. After Ning got in the carriage, Fanny followed in and closed the door. And Ning, does the driver know where to go? You only told the nearest bank, so I told him. Or do you want to specify a bank? Fanny asked. No, any bank will do. And Ning paused, and then said, it's best to be a more reliable bank. I mean the kind that won't go bankrupt easily. In that case, I personally recommend Telsyn Bank. It's a British bank headquartered in London and has branches in Paris. Many nobles keep their money there. Fanny replied. And Ning, a British bank? Why would French nobles keep their money in British banks? Of course it's because of recent rumors that His Majesty the King is about to go bankrupt and may increase taxes. Fanny replied. And Ning raised her eyebrows. As a maid, you know a lot. Every Parisian is talking about this. You only need to listen to the gentleman's high-sounding talks in the square of the royal palace and you will know. The maid paused and said, what's more, most of these contents are fabricated by His Excellency the Duke. And Ning said oh, he already understood what was going on. The Duke of Orleans, Tilestal, opened his noble territory to the citizens of Paris, making the royal palace a public opinion center for the citizens of Paris, and then spread all kinds of news that were unfavorable to the king. The Duke probably didn't know what kind of giant fire he was adding. Fanny, do you want to go to the branch of Telsyn Bank in Paris instead? And Ning hesitated. As a person who knew the future direction, it seemed a natural choice to put his money in a safer British bank. But the problem is, when Britain becomes a member of the anti-French alliance in the future, as a Frenchman who is inclined to revolution, can he still get his small money in this bank? And Ning thought about it and felt that it would be better to go to a local bank. Although there is a risk that the banker will be sent to the guillotine in the future, as long as you operate it well, you should be able to get the money out before that. And Ning, no, as a Frenchman, I don't trust the British. Fanny, really? I heard that you are from Seine. Shouldn't people in Normandy have a better impression of the British? And Ning, this is prejudice. The Norman conquest was more than 700 years ago, and the British occupied Normandy 300 or 400 years ago. We are French with a pure bloodline. The maid stared at Ning for a few seconds, then exclaimed, just like the young lady said, you are a little weird. And Ning, huh? The young lady said that you are the son of a cobbler, but you speak fluent German and your French doesn't have that rude accent. And just now, you fluently spoke the history of Normandy. This is not something you can learn in Sunday school, right? And Ning thought to herself, good guy, you are testing me on behalf of your young lady? He quickly tried to make up for it. The priest in Sunday school likes to tell us historical stories, and it's quite interesting to listen to them as stories. Fanny was amazed. It's the priest's interest, that makes sense. And Ning secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Damn, in this era, being too knowledgeable as the son of a leather worker would also arouse suspicion. Fanny asked again, What money are you going to deposit in the bank? Since you're just going to a random bank, you shouldn't be withdrawing money you have deposited in the bank before, right? And Ning hesitated again. After thinking carefully, this question was not easy to answer. If he took out a large bag of coins from the bank under the gaze of the little maid, it would be difficult to explain. So Ning said, when I was escorting the Duke's daughter away from the battlefield, I defeated a robber and took some spoils. On the way back to France, I exchanged them for money with a merchant. Is that so? I just talked to the lady while she was taking a bath. She never mentioned such a thing. I exchanged the money without her knowledge. In fact, I also took several crowns of silver coins from the lady, and exchanged them for more convenient copper coins with a merchant. Fanny curled her lips. Is that so? At this time, the rented carriage slowed down significantly, and the coachman opened the window at the rear of the carriage and said loudly, "We have arrived at the Solon Bank. Do you want to get off?" And Ning immediately said, "Okay, I'll get off here." Then the coachman's whoa sound came from outside the window, and the carriage slowly stopped. And Ning opened the door and jumped out of the car without waiting for the maid to open it. The driver sitting at the back of the carriage pointed to the two-story building in front of him and said, "This is the Solon Bank, sir." And Ning looked up and saw the bank's sign, so he strode towards the gate. Fanny also got off the car, paid the fare to the driver, and then ran to catch up with Ning. And Ning was shocked, thinking that this guy was really going to follow him in. I don't know how the task reward will be paid in the bank. Will it look weird? Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the bank, the middle-aged gentleman standing behind the counter who looked very British butler looked up at him and immediately smiled and said, "Oh, Mr. Frost. You came at the right time, and there is a bill for you." And Ning thought it was bad. He glanced at Fanny who followed in and found that the maid was already shocked. That must be shocking, because Ning would come to this bank because she chose it based on the distance. As a result, the bank staff greeted Ning as soon as he came in, as if they were very familiar with Ning. Anyone would find it incredible. If I had known this, I should have come to the bank alone. However, the next moment, the maid's shocked expression disappeared, and she whispered, "No wonder you came to this bank, you are an old customer." Wait a minute? So it was my plugin that rationalized this unreasonable place? And Ning couldn't help but look at Fanny more, but she couldn't see anything unusual from her expression. Can my plugin change other people's cognition and memory without making a sound? At this time, the staff of Solon Bank had come out from behind the counter and took the initiative to greet Mr. Frost, please come to the VIP room, and this maid, please wait in the lobby. Fanny nodded, "Well, I'll wait here, Mr. Frost, please do your business quickly." And Ning nodded, and then entered the VIP room under the guidance of the bank staff with a British butler style. Here I just use this to write about the currency and financial system of this era. The system will not give money or tasks later. Because everyone said they didn't like reading articles with a strong system and a strong presence, so I follow their lead. Chapter 14, Chaotic Monetary System. The decoration of the VIP room gave people the feeling that it was originally a Baroque room that was forcibly changed to Rococo style. This was particularly evident on the desk. In an environment surrounded by Rococo style, there was such a gorgeous desk full of gold and ivory carvings, which was a bit abrupt. And Ning couldn't help but comment, "This desk is totally out of tune with the decor of the entire VIP room. Any desk you move from a street coffee shop would be more suitable than this." The bank clerk looked apologetic. "This desk was here when we bought this room as the bank's office." The supervisor felt it was not a good idea to throw it away. At this time the door opened, and a gentleman dressed in an aristocratic manner walked into the room and saluted Ning. "Hello, Mr. Frost, I am the banker who is reluctant to throw away this desk. You can call me Croy." "Excuse me, can we start handling your business?" And Ning nodded. "Mr. Croy, let's get started." Croy came to the table and took out a document from a stack of documents. "We have received a bill of exchange for you. According to this bill of exchange, we have to pay you 550 crowns. Do you want us to pay you directly or convert it into gold? 550 silver coins are very heavy." The currency in France during this era was very chaotic, with many different currency units, such as the Louis d'Or, the Écu d'Or, the Livre, the Sou, the Daniel, and the Kroner. One of the main reasons for this was that metal currency was in circulation throughout France. The French finance minister had previously used paper money, but due to problems such as excessive issuance, the paper money quickly became waste paper, and as a result, the public generally distrusted paper money. Metal coins have value because they contain precious metals such as gold and silver. The exchange between them must be calculated based on the content of gold and silver, so it is very complicated. It is not like the official currency backed by the central bank, which can forcibly stipulate the exchange ratio of different units. For example, the British stipulated that £1 equals 20 shillings and 1 shilling equals 12 pence. No matter how much gold and silver are contained in the coin, it is exchanged in this way. A unified monetary system is very beneficial to economic development. France is not like this. Not only is the currency in a mess, but the feudal nobles also retain a certain degree of tariff autonomy, which seriously affects the development of commerce. For this reason, Louis XV's finance minister had planned to reform, so he stipulated that 1 mark of gold could be exchanged for 740 livres and 9 sols, trying to unify the monetary system, but it was useless. Because of this, Ning now had to worry about how to withdraw his reward. He thought about it and said to Croix, "I'll open an account here." "Croix, account? Oh, do you mean to deposit this money in our bank? Let us issue you a deposit check." And Ning opened his mouth wide. He remembered that banks now do not have an account system. Depositing money in a bank will get a deposit check as a voucher, and anyone can exchange this deposit check. The deposit check is equivalent to a voucher that can be dealt with, and can even be traded freely. And Ning finally reacted. He nodded and said, "Yes, I want to convert 550 crowns into gold Louis and keep it with you." After all, gold Louis is generally not used in daily life. For the part that cannot be rounded up, please help me convert it into sous. I want to use it as change. Mr. Croix nodded. "I understand. I'll do it right away." After that, he clapped his hands, and several bank employees brought in a large bag of silver coins. Then Mr. Croix sat behind his desk, put on his glasses and began to weigh the silver coins with a scale. And Ning stared at Mr. Croix fiddling with the weights and scales in amazement. The last time he saw a similar scene was in the Harry Potter movie. When Harry first entered Gringotts, he saw a bunch of goblins weighing gold coins. Looking at this scene, Ning deeply realized the backwardness of this era. It is so troublesome to weigh and calculate the value of currency for every transaction. When you think about it this way, the assignats issued by revolutionary France after the Great Revolution was actually an improvement. It's a pity that at that time, because there was no one to coordinate, the French authorities printed assignats desperately and the value of the currency collapsed. And Ning silently noted this point. Maybe he could do something in this regard after the outbreak of the Great Revolution. Croix and others were busy for a long time and finally completed the exchange entrusted by Ning, and then said to Ning, "We can give you a deposit note of 20 gold Louis and 10 livres in change. We can pay you the 10 livres in the way you want." And Ning nodded. "Okay, you give me 5 livres of silver coins, and the rest will be exchanged for sous." "I understand. Wait a moment." Soon Ning got the first deposit note after his time travel and a small bag of coins. He put the deposit ticket into the inner pocket of his jacket, tied the coin to his belt, and then said goodbye to Mr. Croix. "Well, I'll leave first." "Goodbye." Croix stood up and escorted Ning out of the VIP room. Outside the VIP room, Fanny was standing on the left side of the door, waiting quietly, looking like a loyal dog waiting for his master to go to the toilet outside the toilet door. At this time, Ning suddenly discovered that Fanny's maid dress was not a long skirt, but exposed her calves in white stockings. This is the design of a maid dress in later generations. In theory, the maid dress of this era should be a long skirt that covers the ankles. Ning hurriedly asked, "Fanny, why is your maid dress only this long?" Fanny noticed that Ning came out from inside. She rolled her eyes and asked back, "If the skirt is too long, won't it get stained with mud on the ground? I am a maid in the Duke's house. I won't wear a long skirt like an ordinary working woman. This is the same reason why you, Mr. Frost, don't wear trousers." Ning was shocked. It seems that the logic of this time and space is like this. Nobles and rich people wear trousers and white stockings because they dislike the dirt on the ground, so naturally, women in noble families will not wear too long skirts. Pants and long skirts are things that poor laborers wear. It's quite reasonable, at least the logic itself is closed. Wait a minute. Ning suddenly realized something. So I can often see beautiful girls in white silk in this time and space? He glanced at Fanny's white silk again. The moment he saw this white silk, Ning suddenly felt that this world seemed to have more than just inconveniences. "Fanny, Have you finished your business? And Ning patted his purse. I finished it, and took out some change. You are the guest of the Duke, and theoretically you shouldn't need change. Fanny said, then next, I will take you to the tailor as the head maid ordered. If you need anything, we can buy it by the way. And Ning was about to answer when he saw Mr. Croy from the bank coming out of the VIP room. His eyes fell on Croy's wig, and he thought about whether to buy a wig for himself. Fanny, the nobles in Paris will not treat you as one of their own just because you wear a wig. In fact, the news should have spread by now that the lady's benefactor is the son of a cobbler. And Ning, can you read minds? How is that possible? As a servant, I'm just better at observing words and expressions. Besides, you were staring at the banker's wig just now, it was very obvious. And Ning, so your suggestion is that I don't need to get a wig? Absolutely not. People who should respect you will not disrespect you just because you don't have a wig. On the contrary, people who look down on you will only have one more excuse to laugh at you when they see your wig. And Ning raised his eyebrows, then he suddenly thought of something, and asked Fanny, what about you? Are you someone who looks down on me, or someone who looks up to me? Fanny, I don't understand you yet. Once I understand you, I will decide my attitude towards you. Let's not talk about this, let's go. I didn't find the details of the exchange between crowns and gold Louis, so I set it up randomly. Just treat it as a different world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15, Hit the Mark. The subsequent process, rounded off to the nearest 10, was equivalent to Fanny taking Ning on a date in Paris. At least that's how Ning imagined it. In his previous life, Ning had always gone shopping with girls in a group, and the experience of shopping alone with a girl like this was basically zero. After all, before he traveled through time, he was busy working 996 hours for his future, and had no time to think about solving personal problems. Fanny took Ning to the tailor shop to buy clothes, and then went to the daily necessities store to buy daily necessities such as wallets, and finally had a cup of coffee in a roadside cafe. When the sun began to set, Ning finally got on the rented carriage rented by Fanny and returned to the vicinity of the royal palace. As soon as he got off the carriage, he heard someone giving a speech to the crowd on the street. The speaker was a nobleman wearing a wig. He waved his hands and roared at the crowd, "In the New World, people have driven away the king and declared that all men are born equal. If the people in the New World can do this, so can we. Why are the nobles and priests born nobler than us?" And Ning slowed down a little, because the speaker looked like a nobleman. A nobleman actually opposed the privileges of the nobility in his speech. Just as Ning was puzzled, someone in the crowd teased, "Mabry, where did you steal another wig?" The speaker roared, "I am a nobleman myself. But because I am a nobleman, I know that there is nothing great about us. We just have an extra day in our names. This doesn't make us smarter." And Ning thought about it and finally remembered who this person was. Gabriel de Mably, an Enlightenment thinker and utopianist, if I remember correctly. He is already 71 years old, and he is still giving a speech in the public space of the royal palace. At this time, another onlooker shouted, "Come down, Mably, I came here to listen to the Queen's love affairs." "And the love affairs of Madame Lamballe?" Another person echoed. "You only know these love affairs. But I'm talking about everyone's human rights. You will never become a citizen as Rousseau said." The old gentleman began to curse. And Ning was watching happily, but Fanny suddenly coughed, attracting his attention. "As long as you live in the royal palace, you can see such scenes every day. Paris is not short of speeches, debates, and duels." Fanny said, "Let's go in quickly, it's almost dinner time." And Ning, is this situation really common? Yes, after all, it's getting dark, and the trousers guys are used to going to the tavern for a drink after work. The Duke's rented house has opened some of the best taverns in Paris. So at this time, the trousers guys will gather here, and people like Mr. Mably will preach their ideas to them. And Ning muttered, "Trousers." Later books about the French Revolution like to call the Parisian citizens sans culottes, aiming to emphasize the difference between them and the nobility. It is estimated that this trousers guy is the source of the word sans culottes. Fanny stepped forward and pushed Ning's back. "Let's go, it's time to eat." And Ning was pushed all the way to her master's place. At this time, several young men dressed as nobles came out from the side door of the royal palace and happened to meet Ning. Ning heard Fanny, who was pushing him from behind, mutter, "Damn, we bump into each other again." It seemed that Fanny knew something. "Look, this guy couldn't be the son of the shoemaker that Christina mentioned." One of the noble youths pointed at Ning and said, "After all, he is accompanied by Christina's stubborn little maid." Well, he actually recognized him by the little maid. Another noble youth nodded, "It must be him, look at his ill-fitting clothes. He wants to pretend to be a noble, but he doesn't think that the smell of shoe polish on his body betrays him from a distance." It seems that this group of nobles equates a shoemaker with a shoe shiner. Ning frowned, and the other party's obvious tone of picking faults made him very unhappy. So he held his head high and responded neither arrogantly nor humbly, "I am Andy Frost, the son of a leatherworker. What advice do you have?" As soon as he finished speaking, Fanny lowered her voice and said, "Don't be provoked by them, they just like to pick on people like you." Advice. Several noble sons looked at each other, and then surrounded him. "It was you who asked us to give you advice. Let me see, your chaps don't look like they fit well." Of course they don't fit. After all, he has been wearing trousers since he was born. How can it be possible for chaps to fit him suddenly? Yes, he looks like a pig in chaps. The noble boys laughed. Before Ning could retort, one of the noble boys said, "When I heard Christina talk about your heroic act, I felt strange. Aren't you a drummer? How could you beat a fully armed robber?" Another boy immediately said, "I think it was too dark, and the robber slipped and hid his knife. Or it could be like this. He actually wanted to wipe the robber's shoes." The third noble boy begged, "Oh robber, let me wipe your shoes. Look, your shoes are all covered in mud. My father is a leatherworker, and my craftsmanship is great." Then the robber believed it and was about to take off his shoes. Our leatherwork hero took the opportunity to chop off the robber's head. The boys laughed again. And Ning was furious. At this time, he suddenly remembered what Fanny had just said, that the most common things in Paris were speeches, debates and duels. And Ning had a system, so if he dueled with a rapier, theoretically he would never lose. So Ning took out the gloves he had just bought and threw them accurately at the face of the noble boy who was the first to come out of the royal palace. The noble boys were all silent at once. And Ning finally had a chance to speak, and he said loudly, "Since you doubt my swordsmanship, why don't you learn it yourself? I heard that there are often duels in Paris, and I guess you are also veterans of duels." At this time, Fanny came over and pulled Ning's clothes, and whispered in his ear, "What are you doing? Dueling with a noble. If you lose, you will lose your life, and if you win, you will get into trouble. His parents will hate you for the rest of their lives." And Ning thought, "No, after I win, the young master's parents will hate me for 9 years at most, and then they can choose a street lamp style they like. When the revolution comes, all the nobles are screwed." At this time, the young nobleman who had his gloves thrown by Ning gnashed his teeth and questioned, "You are so brave, do you know who I am?" And Ning, "I don't care who you are, even if you are the king's son, I will still duel with you. Do you dare to accept the challenge of a leatherworker's son? If not, just shut up and get out." Chapter 16 Duel established. At this time, the crowd who were watching Fabri's speech noticed the commotion here. But the crowd didn't seem to be able to grasp the situation all at once. And Ning heard someone muttering in a low voice, "What's going on? Are the noble young masters jealous?" And Ning remembered that she was also a man wearing trousers, and she also had a maid with her, so she was not recognized as one of their own by the trouser men. But this was only temporary, because the man who was thrown a glove immediately helped Ning. God's belly button. He said a word that means fuck in French. "You, the son of a leatherworker, dare to throw my gloves? I am Count Reginord. My father is Marcus Lachol." And Ning sneered, "What count? Do you have a title? You call yourself a count? You are just an ordinary person like me. The descendants of the Marcus are called counts, which is actually a honorific title, not that he really has the title of count. The title can only be passed down in order after the original owner dies." Now the onlookers around understood the situation, and then the men in long trousers immediately stood on Ning's side and began to shout in support, "That's right. The Marcus is your father, we call you Earl just to be polite. Fuck is leatherworker's son." Reginald was furious. "What did you say? I am a noble. Even if I didn't inherit the title, I am different from you ordinary people. How dare you compare yourself with us? What's the difference?" Mabley stood beside Ning. "Your Earl is an honorary title, I am a real earl. I don't think there's any difference between me and the son of this leatherworker. Mabley turned to Ning and said, very good, young man. Be brave and say no to the nobles. A duel requires a witness from each side, and I am willing to be your witness. And Ning nodded, thank you, Sir Mabley. Call me sir. Mabley corrected, the title is just a title. Some people can't see this clearly, so they deceive themselves. And Ning nodded, and then said to the man named Reginald, what do you think? I already have witnesses here, and so many people are watching. If you refuse to duel, you will become the laughingstock of all Paris. Every tavern will spread the news tomorrow that the son of Marcus Richard was frightened by the son of a shoemaker. Reginald laughed. Huh? Do you think I will refuse? What a joke. I have received the best swordsmanship training since I was a child. Although my brother's training is just to get by, I am different. My swordsmanship is real. It's just a duel, I agree. You'd better write to your parents in the countryside and ask them to collect your body. After Reginald finished speaking, several of his followers laughed. I didn't expect that someone would be so blind as to duel with you, Reggie. Doesn't he know that Reggie has won 3 duels? Wow, it seems that this Reginald is an undefeated general in duels. Reginald, we will also have a witness, and then we will need a third-party witness. I think it would be better if I ask Your Excellency the Duke to serve as the witness. At this time a voice was heard, Your Excellency the Duke may not have such time. I will be the third-party witness. And Ning looked in the direction of the voice and saw a well-dressed tall gentleman who looked like a priest from his clothes. Let me introduce myself. I'm Emmanuel Cius. As you can see, I'm a priest. I think it shouldn't be a big problem for me to serve as a third-party witness. And Ning was shocked. What day is it today? This afternoon, he first ran into Mabley, and then ran into Cius. Are the historical figures of the Great Revolution lining up to appear? Although Cius was a priest and belonged to the first estate of the 3-level parliament, he ran to the third estate and wrote a famous pamphlet. What is the third estate? There is a famous saying in this pamphlet, what is the third estate? It is everything. But Ning thought about it again. The Palais Royal is now the main center for the dissemination of Enlightenment ideas in the whole of Paris. It is estimated that the progressive people living in Paris will show up at the Palais Royal from time to time. Then it is normal to run into 1 or 2 progressive people near the Palais Royal. Reginald looked very happy. Very good. In this way, we have enough witnesses. Your Excellency, you can set the time for the duel. As the person who is challenged to the duel, I have the right to choose the weapon. I choose the dagger as the duel weapon. Cius, that is your right, but let me ask the son of the cobbler about the time of the duel. How about tomorrow afternoon? And Ning nodded, no problem. Tomorrow afternoon. As for the place, I am not very familiar with Paris. Is there any place in Paris where the son of a noble can bleed without looking out of place? The lawn near the Bois de Boulogne is a good place. Someone in the crowd shouted, I went there for an outing in the spring this year. And Ning glanced at the person who shouted and found that he was a gentleman dressed like an intellectual, wearing single-sided glasses. And Ning guessed that he might be an employee of a business or a clerk of the Paris municipal government. Paris now has a very large group of petty bourgeoisie, and these people will later become part of the sans-culottes and be swept up in the torrent of the times. Cius nodded, okay. That's decided, the law north of the Bois de Boulogne, tomorrow afternoon. Please arrive on time with your witnesses. After Cius finished speaking, he turned and looked at Ning. Sir, I haven't asked your name yet. My name is Andy Frost, the son of a leatherworker. And Ning deliberately added her father's occupation. Cius sighed. To be honest, I admire your courage very much, but it is obviously not wise to challenge a noble who has won duels many times. I will do my best tomorrow, and I hope you can survive the duel. After that, Cius looked at Mabley. Mr. Mabley, I didn't expect you to be involved in such a thing. Cius, you should see the courage of Mr. Frost just now. If everyone in the third estate can have such courage, France will undergo earth-shaking changes. Mabley was obviously very excited. It turned out that he and Cius were old friends. And Ning actually wanted to tell these two that the third estate in France was not lacking in courage, they just lacked a famine. Cius patted Ning on the shoulder, then said to Mabley, okay, my friend, maybe we can go to a nearby coffee shop that is still open for a drink. Mr. Frost, see you tomorrow. And Ning nodded. Then Cius and Mabley left. Reginald stepped forward, pointed at Ning's throat and said, that priest and Mabley seem to think that being witnesses could save your life. How naive. Tomorrow is the day you die. A guy like you is not worthy to be around Miss Tillistel. Ning smiled contemptuously. Try it if you can. I am a survivor of a life and death battlefield. People like you who have only played house in the duel arena are not my opponent at all. Reginald snorted and left with a group of noble buddies. At this time, the onlookers also began to disperse, chatting about tomorrow's duel while walking towards a nearby tavern. Only Fanny, who was hanging her eyes, was left by Ning's side. Fanny, you idiot. That Reginald has killed 2 men who were closely related to the lady in the duel, and injured 1. He seems to think that only he is worthy of the lady. Your provocation is exactly what he wants. If you hadn't thrown the glove, Reginald wouldn't have challenged a commoner to a duel. And Ning, can't a noble challenge a commoner to a duel? Because it would be embarrassing. Any activity related to commoners would bring shame to the nobles. Fanny said unhappily, but you, idiot, did it for others. And Ning raised his eyebrows. Why are you so angry? I get angry when I see others do stupid things. But I may not lose tomorrow. In fact, Ning felt that he would probably win tomorrow. He has someone hanging on to him. Fanny rolled her eyes. Humph, if you win tomorrow, I will. Ning waited for a few seconds, and when Fanny got stuck, he asked, what will you do? I haven't thought about it. Anyway, I will give you a little benefit. But I don't think it's likely. Tomorrow I will collect your body on behalf of your parents. Imagine how sad your parents will be when they receive the obituary. Ning curled his lips. At this time, he remembered that he had returned to Paris safely, and it seemed that he should send a letter to his parents in the countryside of Seine to report his safety. Ning remembered that in her original family, her brother should be literate and could read the faith to her parents. At this time, Fanny sighed. Hey, although you will die tomorrow, I am still your servant today. Come into the house quickly, I will bring you food. Chapter 17 Advice from the Maid. At nightfall, Fanny was about to leave the main building of the royal palace after serving Mr. Andy Frost's dinner when she was suddenly stopped by Miss Christine de Lestel. Fanny was a little surprised. Miss, it's dinner time, you should go to the restaurant. What's wrong with you? You let Andy and Reginald duel with you. Fanny looked aggrieved. Originally, they wouldn't have met, but when we were around the royal palace, we happened to run into Sir Fabry's speech. He stopped to take a look, and finally we ran into each other. Fanny's expression and actions almost made her say it's all Fabry's fault. Christina sighed. I never thought that Reginald would challenge a commoner to a duel. I thought he looked down on commoners so much that he would never allow his family's name to be associated with commoners. Fanny was a little embarrassed. It was Mr. Frost who threw the glove. Christina was stunned. To whom? To Reginald, and I was watching from the side. He seemed to deliberately aim at the leader of the nobles. Christina opened her mouth wide. This is actually like this. But Frost did show very superb swordsmanship in the process of rescuing me from the battlefield. He killed the robber who wanted to rob us in an instant. Fanny looked at her own lady suspiciously. Are you sure you saw the son of a cobbler performing superb swordsmanship? This is too much, right? Christina hesitated. It was very dark at the time, and the process happened in an instant. I'm not too sure. Fanny, Reginald's lackeys think that the robber fell and directly hit Mr. Frost's knife. Is there such a possibility? Christina pursed her lips. I was very nervous at that time. I just fired a shot with my pistol, but didn't hit anything. I was desperately reloading, so I really didn't see it clearly. Fanny, I understand, everything is the scene that you beautified without authorization. Mr. Frost just barely killed the robber. And you exaggerated it at the salon welcoming you back this afternoon. In this way, it is normal for Reginald to target Mr. Frost. Are you saying this is my fault? I didn't say anything, miss. In any case, it is a fait accompli that Mr. Frost will face Reginald, who has won 3 duels, tomorrow. All I can do is give him a little extra food tonight. Fanny glanced at Christina. Miss, you should go to dinner too. If you are late, the lady will scold you again. Christina looked very depressed. This damn Reginald, how can I make him understand that I don't like him at all and have no interest in him? Fanny, when you go to the Brienne Military Academy, he will understand. Now he seems to think that your claim to go to the military academy is a tease to him. How can that be understood as a tease? Christina raised her voice slightly, and the voice was heard by the people in the restaurant. Christina. The Duchess's voice floated out of the restaurant. The whole family is waiting for you to pray before dinner. I'm coming, Mom. Christina responded loudly. then let go of Fanny's hand, straightened her clothes, and strode into the restaurant with her head held high. Fanny pouted, holding the large plate, and walked away quickly. When Ning saw the dinner Fanny brought up, she was in a good mood. "Oh, it looks very rich. I thought I would have to accompany black bread tonight." "Fanny, let the Duke's guests eat black bread. It will make the Duke lose face if it gets out." "Is that so? I thought this was my last dinner." And Ning smiled and joked. "Fanny, you are still in the mood to joke. Reginald has gone crazy in order to win the young lady's love. He will find a chance to kill tomorrow, even if Father Cis tries his best to stop him." And Ning smiled and said, "Rather than worrying about this, I'm more worried about whether there will be any problems if I, as a commoner, kill a noble." Fanny frowned slightly. "In theory, killing the opponent in a duel is honorable and legal, but—" And Ning tore the bread while completing the maid's unfinished words, "but that is a matter between two nobles." Fanny nodded. "Yes, nobles generally only duel with nobles, while commoners generally do not duel. Commoners like to fight directly. Like this." A commoner threw a glove on the noble's face. And Ning stuffed the bread into her mouth, and then found that the bread eaten in the Duke's house was also damn hard. "Is this the taste of all French bread? Where on earth should I go to eat the soft, sticky and fragrant bread in my memory?" The main course of dinner was steak. And Ning threw down the bread, picked up the knife and fork and started cutting the steak. Fanny looked at Ning's behavior and asked in confusion, "It looks like you have eaten steak before." And Ning, "I shouldn't have eaten it, right?" The maid hesitated for a few seconds. "Nowadays, there are many civilians who have eaten steak. I don't know if the cobbler's family can afford it." The answer is that they can't afford it. In the memory that Ning inherited from the original owner, there is no memory of their family eating steak. But it doesn't matter. And Ning tasted the steak happily. Compared with the steak Ning ate in later life, this steak had a little less spices, but the cooking time was definitely more suitable than the Chinese steak Ning had eaten, and the whole steak tasted excellent. Fanny silently poured Ning a glass of water and placed it next to her, then watched Ning eat in silence. And Ning glanced at Fanny. "Where's your meal?" "The servants will eat at 9 o'clock, and I will eat then." And Ning said, "Oh." Fanny added, "But seeing you eating so happily, I am indeed a little hungry." And Ning, "Then sit down and eat together. I am not a noble lord, so you don't have to care about so many rules." Fanny, "I don't really want to eat at the same table with someone who is going to die tomorrow." And Ning smiled and said, "I won't die. I am still waiting for you to give me the benefits you promised. You said in the afternoon that you would give me benefits if I survived. I envy your optimistic spirit." And Ning laughed. "By the way, will you only take care of me until I go to Brienne Military Academy, or will you take care of me after I go to the military academy?" And Ning brought up a new topic. "Fanny, it won't be too late to discuss this issue after you have dinner tomorrow." Okay, let's discuss something else. What do you think I should wear tomorrow?" "Fanny, does it make any difference?" "Of course, I will be the focus of public opinion tomorrow. After all, I am going to kill the son of a Marcus." "Fanny, are you serious? Do you really think you can win tomorrow?" And Ning nodded. "Believe me, I will win." Fanny tilted her head slightly, and after thinking for a while, she said to Ning seriously, "Then I suggest you kill him directly, because if you let him live, you will definitely fall into endless revenge. Reggie will not let go of the civilians who humiliated him." Chapter 18, The Focus of the Duel Day. The next afternoon, there were fewer people gathered outside the Bois de Boulogne to watch the fun than Ning had expected. He looked around as soon as he got off the carriage, but he didn't see many people. Fanny, who got off the carriage later, asked, "What are you looking at?" "I thought there would be more people watching." "Fanny, the trouser man is working at this time. The only people who would come to watch are the nobles who have nothing to do." And Ning curled his lips. He had already seen the parasols set up by the noble gentleman not far away, and several ladies in gorgeous dresses were sitting under the parasols chatting. "Fanny, those over there are all fans of Reginald. They are all here to see how the son of a cobbler like you died." And Ning, "How can such a person have fans?" "There are a lot of fans, but Our Lady is determined to be a modern Joan of Arc, so she doesn't pay any attention to him. In the eyes of other noble ladies, he is a brave white knight who won 3 duels, and his popularity is as high as those famous poets." While Fanny was talking, another carriage came and 3 beautiful noble ladies got off. The clothes of these noble ladies are not like the noble ladies in the 18th century in Ning's impression. Instead, They are closer to the later Lolita style. One of the most obvious characteristics is that the noble ladies in this time and space do not wear long skirts. The length of the skirts is basically to the knees, and then the calves below are exposed, and they wear white stockings. So in this time and space, you can actually distinguish between ordinary people and rich people just by looking at the stockings. Rich men wear leggings, expose their calves and wear stockings, and women wear mid-length skirts that expose their calves and wear stockings, while ordinary men wear long pants and women wear long skirts. Fanny, which noble lady are you looking at? I'm not looking at a specific one, I'm observing their clothes. And Ning replied. Is that so? But Mr. Mirabeau is waving at you, don't you respond? And Ning then realized that Mirabeau had just got off the carriage not far away and was waving at this side. And Ning waved his hand quickly, and the fat knight ran over and said to Ning, Mr. Frost, I heard that you are fighting for Miss Christina. Who told you that? And Ning frowned. No, I challenged because Reginald insulted me. And Ning paused and added, he insulted the entire common people. In this way, and Ning's reason for the duel seemed more reasonable. Mirabeau looked around, but the common people don't seem to pay much attention to this duel. The people who came to watch are all nobles. If you die in this duel, they won't be grateful at all. On the contrary, they will praise Reginald's glorious deeds. After all, he has won 4 duels. While Mirabeau was talking, another carriage stopped near Ning, and Sir Mabley got off the carriage. Sir Mabley. Mirabeau immediately stepped forward to shake hands. Mabley snorted, Mr. Mirabeau, there are no romantic affairs of the Queen here. I am just collecting folk songs. What I saw today can be used to write about 2 gentlemen vying for the Queen. And Ning saw that Mabley looked down on Mirabeau. After all, Mirabeau was just a writer hired by the Duke to write erotic stories about the Queen. Thinking about it carefully, it is quite touching. A writer who wrote erotic stories about the Queen eventually became one of the leaders of the National Assembly and was once placed in the Pantheon after his death. This fully illustrates that a person's destiny depends not only on personal struggle but also on the course of history. At this time, SYNOPSIS also came. SYNOPSIS, Mr. Frost, good afternoon. I brought an arms dealer with me. He will be responsible for checking your weapons later. In addition, if you need to provide weapons, he will also provide you with weapons that comply with the rules. The arms dealer stepped forward and took out a sword. You can try this one. Although it looks unattractive, I guarantee its sharpness. And Ning took the sword and pulled it out with force. The blade was polished to a bright shine, reflecting the afternoon sun. Very good, I will use this sword. Thank you very much. The arms dealer bowed to Ning. At this time, 3 carriages drove over from a distance, and the leading carriage had a noble emblem on the door. Fanny whispered in Ning's ear, your opponent is here, and the emblem is the emblem of Marcus Licia. As soon as the voice fell, Reginald opened the door of the carriage and jumped out of the car, and then several beautiful noble ladies got out of the same car. And Ning was shocked. I thought this Reginald was Christina's suitor. Mirabeau smiled and said, of course he is, but no one stipulates that when he is pursuing the Duke's daughter, he cannot accept the kindness of other ladies. And Ning understood, this is the so-called Sea King. He watched Reginald kiss the hands of several ladies before handing them over to the servants, turning around and walking towards this side with a middle-aged gentleman who got off another carriage. Mr. SYNOPSIS, this is my witness, Count Corey. Reginald introduced a middle-aged man to SYNOPSIS. He has witnessed me achieving glory 3 times. Ning originally thought that the witness brought by Reginald would also be a celebrity who would emerge in the Great Revolution later, but it turned out to be someone whose name Ning didn't know at all. It seems that running into Mabley and SYNOPSIS in a row yesterday was just a coincidence, and he would not run into celebrities in history in a row. After all, Paris is so big, and now Paris has a permanent population of about 1 million. It is not so easy to run into them. Ning, now that everyone is here, can we start? Reginald, it seems that someone can't wait to die. SYNOPSIS, Mr. Reginald, please give the weapon to this arms dealer for inspection. Reginald drew out his sword and handed it to the arms dealer. While the weapons dealer was checking the weapons, he looked at Ning with a haughty look on his face. To be honest, there is no honor in killing a pariah who has not received any sword training. And Ning, in that case, you can apply to not use the sword, and fight me with my sword with your bare hands. This will definitely make you win full of honor. Reginald was completely silent by Ning's move. Since he has learned swordsmanship, he should know that a sharp sword with a blade is no joke, and it is extremely difficult to fight against a sword with bare hands. And Ning has seen a video of a WJ guy teaching how to deal with a knife-wielding gangster. The guy's advice in that video is run, then call the police. While Reginald was silent, Ning continued to laugh at him. What? You don't even have the courage to do this. It seems that honor is worthless to you. Reginald gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. Just wait. I'm going to tear your mouth apart with my sword. Ning, really? I'm ready to bite your blade with my teeth. Mirabeau, ha. Oh, sorry. Ning didn't expect that he actually hit Mirabeau's funny spot. Mirabeau's smile made the whole atmosphere weird. Everyone was awkward. Fortunately, the weapons dealer spoke at this time. I checked it. There is no problem with this sword. It is very sharp and a good sword. After that, the weapons dealer returned the sword to Reginald, who looked at C.I.S. and said, "Then we can start, Mr. Priest." C.I.S. was about to answer when the sound of horse hooves approached again. This time, the carriage came with the coat of arms of the Duke of Orleans. Everyone saluted the carriage. After all, the revolution had not yet broken out, and the Duke, as a great nobleman in the line of succession to the French throne, still had a considerable status. The carriage stopped not far from the crowd, and the door opened and two maids got off first. After the maids set up the steps in front of the carriage door, Christina de L'Estelle in the carriage slowly got off the carriage. She was also wearing a Lolita skirt. The biggest difference between the skirt and the later Lolita skirt was the low opening on the chest. Ning looked at the exaggerated chest muscles in the opening and couldn't help but be amazed. On the way to escape, in order to confirm whether Klotz was male or female, Ning touched it, but he didn't think it was so exaggerated at that time. Reginald immediately stepped forward and wanted to pull Christina's hand, but the girl dodged it. Then Christina looked at Ning and laughed immediately. "Andy, I'm here to cheer you up." All of a sudden, Ning became the focus. Mirabeau whistled uneducatedly, and it seemed that he had already imagined in his mind a little story of more than 10,000 words about the two on their journey home. Chapter 19, Narrow Victory. Ning heard the noble girls nearby burst into noise. They must have been shocked by Christina's action of ignoring Reginald and greeting Ning directly. In this era, the nobles are the privileged class, and the common people are just subjects. There is an invisible gap between the two classes. Although the spread of Enlightenment thought and the development of society have blurred this gap, it will take the arrival of a great revolution for this gap to completely disappear. Christina trotted over and shook Ning's hand. "I'll depend on you later, don't I?" And Ning, "Oh, do you also think that I will lose 9 out of 10 times?" Christina looked away. I thought you would have no problem beating the robbers, but after talking to Fanny last night, I'm not so sure." "Fanny, what did you do?" And Ning glanced at the maid next to her. The maid looked away. At this time, Reginald inserted himself between Ning and the maid, blocking his sight. "Reginald, they said something happened between Christina and you on the way back to France. I didn't believe it at first." And Ning, "Nothing really happened. After all, I always thought she was a man. Nothing else can develop between two men except comradeship." Reginald, "Huh, who knows? I don't care. Anyway, you are going to die today. Mr. Priest, I suggest that we start." Christina looked at Ning and whispered, "I am looking forward to going to the military school in Brienne with you. Survive." As she said that, she let go of Ning's hand and walked towards the position prepared by the servants of the Duke's palace, looking back every few steps. "Mirabeau, if the Duke was not my sponsor, I am afraid I would have been thinking about how to write the story between you." After that, Mirabeau patted Ning on the shoulder and walked towards the noble girls under the parasols nearby, greeting the girls familiarly. Obviously, Mirabeau also hung out with them in the salon. Mabley nodded to Ning and stepped back a few steps. As a witness, he had to witness the whole process up close. At this time, Reginald's friends also came forward to wish him good luck. After a while, only Ning and Reginald were left standing opposite each other, and C.I.S. stood beside them as the main third-party witness, like a referee in a boxing match. C.I.S., "Okay, gentlemen, please draw your swords and salute each other." Reginald drew his sword and saluted Ning. Ning followed suit. At this time, the noble ladies burst into laughter. "Look, he can't even salute. He's the son of a leather worker after all. Reggie, kill him." At this time, Christina's voice overwhelmed the voices of Reginald's relatives and friends. "Andy, I believe in you. Try to survive. This roar seemed to fill Reginald with anger. He looked at Ning fiercely and made beautiful sword flowers with his sword in his hand. What a pity, Christina will be disappointed soon. Seeing him playing sword flowers, Ning immediately thought of the classic scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark and had the urge to take out a pistol to tell him that times have changed. But this kind of duel must use the weapons agreed upon by both parties. Reginald stepped forward and thrust his sword towards Ning. And Ning's hands moved automatically, yes, just as he expected. The sword in Ning's hand blocked Reginald's attack and took advantage of the gap to go straight to his heart. Reginald was shocked and immediately stepped back to distance himself. Ning did not follow him, but held his sword in place. It was not that Ning did not want to chase. He had originally left everything to the system and was waiting to win, but the system did not chase, and let Reginald pull away. In fact, Ning was more surprised than Reginald. He just found out that his system was not a defense and counterattack system, but would automatically block melee attacks and counterattack. This discovery made Ning start to sweat. Originally thought that the system took care of everything, but now it was discovered that the system only took care of defense and counterattack, not attack. Damn it, Ning didn't know anything about swordsmanship, and didn't know how to attack at all. What the hell was going to happen? System, move. But the system didn't move at all. Reginald was shocked by Ning's counterattack. He changed his attitude and became serious. He began to carefully adjust his position. Ning thought about it and decided to tease him. He could only counterattack if Reginald attacked him. He had no choice but to seduce the enemy with his mouth. Ning, hey, do you know why Christina doesn't like you? Ning paid a little attention to the volume. After all, it would not be good if Christina heard it. But Cis and Mabley, who were witnesses, heard it clearly. They all looked at Ning with strange eyes, and Mabley glanced at Christina under the parasol in the distance. Reginald's mouth twitched, and it was obvious that Ning's ridicule was very effective. So Ning continued to make persistent efforts. You guy, are you a dwarf from somewhere? Do you know Gulliver's Travels, that Lilliput country? Reginald shouted and attacked Ning. After the crisp sound of the swords colliding, Ning turned his wrist, blocked the incoming sword, and stabbed at the attacker's chest. Reginald retreated again, but this time Ning followed him. Ning's active follow-up was his action, not the system's. He wanted to solve the problem once and for all. However, a smug smile appeared on Reginald's face. The moment he saw this smile, Ning secretly thought it was not good. Reginald blocked Ning's sword, and then went straight for Ning's neck. At this moment, Ning broke out in a cold sweat. He instinctively tilted his upper body, and a cold touch passed through his neck. It's over, my life is over. At the moment Ning thought this, the system controlled his hand and stabbed the sword into Reginald's heart. The next moment, Ning and Reginald's bodies were still. Then Reginald spat out a mouthful of blood, covered his chest and fell down with a painful face. The people watching around burst into exclamations, and several of Reginald's friends stood up and tried to run over here. Cis shouted, wait a minute. The duel is not over yet. Several noble young masters stopped. Cis walked towards Reginald and leaned over to check his condition. On Ning's side, the cold touch left his throat. He immediately touched his throat and found a handful of blood. Wait, something is wrong. If the carotid artery is cut, blood should be sprayed out like a burst water pipe, right? This thought flashed through Ning's mind. Could it be that because of his sideways movement, Reginald's move just now did not puncture the carotid artery? He looked down at the hand that had just touched his neck and looked at the blood. At this time, Cis stood up. Count Reginald has died. I declare that Mr. Andy Frost has won the duel. Ning raised his right hand. I won. Wait, I'm still bleeding. Should I bandage it first? Fanny ran forward, tore a piece of cloth from her skirt, and began to bandage Ning's neck without saying anything. At this time, Reginald's friends also rushed over and worked together to turn the count over. Reginald's entire shirt was soaked with blood. It was obvious that Ning had suffered heavy bleeding directly from the sword in his heart. No. One of Reginald's friends held his head with both hands and shouted, this is impossible. Reggie is the best swordsman among us. How could he be killed by the son of a leatherworker? You must have cheated. Ning was about to answer, but the man pulled out a pistol, picked up the horn gourd filled with gunpowder, poured gunpowder into the gunpowder reservoir, and then pointed the gun at Ning. Go to hell, civilian. Let me correct the result of the duel. Ning was shocked. At this distance, even with a poor hit rate of bullets in this time and space, It would hit 9 out of 10 times. In a hurry, Ning suddenly pulled Fanny behind him to block it, and then the gun went off. The pungent smell of gunpowder penetrated Ning's nostrils. Ning did not feel that he was hit. He looked down and did not see where he was hit. My goodness, he was only 5 steps away from the person who shot the gun, and he was not shot? The boy who fired the gun exclaimed, "This is impossible. How could you?" He lowered his head and glanced at the ground. Ning also looked down at the ground, and then saw a shiny bullet on the ground, not far from Reginald's body. It seems that when this guy pulled the gun out of his pocket, the bullet fell out of the pistol. In this era, flintlock rifles are muzzle-loaded, and the bullet is pushed in from the muzzle and then blocked with a ball of paper. Just now, this guy pulled the gun too hard and spilled the paper ball and bullet. It is estimated that a lot of gunpowder was also spilled. At this time C.I. stepped forward and snatched the gun from the boy. Enough. The duel is over. Mr. Frost has won. Shooting him is murder, understand? Ning, so, can I cheer for victory? Fanny, cheer for nothing, you still have a wound on your neck. Stay still. As soon as the words fell, Christina ran over and gave Ning a tight hug. Andy. Great, I knew you could do it. Ning originally wanted to hug the girl, but suddenly remembered that he had a sword in one hand and blood in the other. If he hugged her, he was afraid that he would bring blood to her, so he had to give up. Christina hugged Ning enough and distanced herself from him, then pulled Ning's sleeve and said, "Come, I'll introduce you to some of my good sisters." At this time, Fanny interrupted Christina, "Are you sure you want him to meet those ladies with bloody hands?" Christina was stunned for a moment, then noticed Ning's condition. "Oh, this. Okay, you clean up. Fanny, I think you can go home first, and introduce him to your sisters at the salon tomorrow." Christina thought about it and nodded. "Okay, this is better. You should go bandage it quickly. I see there is so much blood on your neck. Is it okay?" Ning, "No problem, it's just a little skin broken." As soon as she finished speaking, Mirabeau hugged her. "Oh my god, I can't believe you actually beat the guy who won 3 duels in a row. When I saw the blood on your neck, I thought you were dead." Ning, "You won't believe it, but I thought so too." Mirabeau laughed, then took Ning's hand and said, "Come on, I know a very good doctor, I'll take you to see him. Miss Telestal, do you mind if we leave for now?" Christina nodded. "No, Mr. Mirabeau, please take him to get him bandaged." Chapter 20, Common People's Hero. Ning was taken by Mirabeau to see what he called a very good doctor. To be honest, Ning had some fear of doctors of this era. After all, Pasteur was not yet born at this time, and humans did not have microbiology, so medicine was a purely empirical medicine. Western medicine at this time was simply synonymous with anti-intellectualism. When you were in doubt, you would bleed first. When you bleed, the wound became infected, causing the wound to fester. If you had a fever, the doctor would tell you that this showed that the bloodletting was effective. Yes, doctors of this era were so well trained. So whether you can recover from an illness in this era depends entirely on whether you are lucky enough. Thinking about it this way, people who can live to be 100 years old in this era are pretty awesome. However, the doctor recommended by Mirabeau was quite good. He actually washed Ning's wound with wine. Ning couldn't help asking him why he did that. The doctor replied, "I don't know. When I was a child, my family would wash wounds with wine. My teacher said that doing so would prevent the wound from festering. It was wrong. He said that festering means that the body is changing in a good direction, but I always feel that it is wrong. I don't like the wound to fester." Ning, you are right. You are definitely the best doctor I have ever seen. Good guy, what does it mean that festering means that the body is changing in a good direction? I'd better treat my injuries myself in the future. The doctor said again, "However, it's okay if you don't treat your wound. It's very shallow, just a little skin break. I don't even know how you bleed so much." It's no wonder that the doctor was surprised. After all, Ning was the chosen one who could breathe blood back. When he came to the clinic, his wound had healed a lot. Ning, maybe this is not my blood. I stabbed my opponent in the heart during the duel just now, and he sprayed a lot of blood. In fact, Reginald didn't spray blood so exaggeratedly, but at this time, Ning could only explain the large amount of blood on his body in this way. Mirabeau, now that the bandage is done, let's go back to the Palais Royal. The news must have spread to every tavern in the Palais Royal. I guess many people are waiting for your triumphant return. Ning nodded. I also want to go home as soon as possible to change this bloody shirt. So Ning said goodbye to the doctor, and then took Mirabeau's carriage through Paris and returned to the Palais Royal. As soon as he arrived at the public square of the Palais Royal, Ning heard a newsboy shouting outside the car window, "Extra edition! The Duke's benefactor is actually the descendant of a hidden noble. He defeated the Paris dual king with his family swordsmanship." Ning frowned, thinking that the Paris dual king probably refers to Reginald, who won 3 duels and is quite famous in the Parisian social circle. It is this title of dual king that sounds like a card player who can summon a blue-eyed white dragon. Mirabeau opened the car window and handed out a copper coin of 1 so, "Here, give me an extra edition." "Here you go." The newsboy immediately stuffed a newspaper into Mirabeau's hand. Mirabeau was flipping through the newspaper, muttering, "Damn it, it's the work of that guy Valor. You beat the nobles, but this guy made you into a hidden noble. These diehards just don't admit that commoners can beat nobles." Ning, what would you say if you were writing it? "Me? I won't write about these unless you are a woman." Mirabeau paused and added, "Or your opponent is a woman." Ning laughed dumbly. He really didn't expect that the guy who later entered the Pantheon of France was actually a drunkard and a womanizer. At this time, the carriage stopped, and the coachman knocked on the front window of the carriage. "We are here, gentlemen." When Mirabeau paid the coachman, Ning opened the door and got out. When he opened the door, he saw Mabley making a speech not far away. "Gentlemen, just today, a son of a shoemaker defeated the son of a marquis who was known to be proficient in swordsmanship in a duel. What does this prove? It proves that commoners are no worse than nobles. And as a witness to the duel, I saw with my own eyes that the angry noble accomplice wanted to shoot the son of a shoemaker, but he made a fool of himself and the bullet slipped out of the barrel of the gun. This proves one thing, a waste is not less of a waste just because he is a noble. What the nobles can do, commoners can do as well. If the nobles can win 3 duels in a row, so can commoners." Ning was listening happily, but she lost her composure when she heard this. "Damn it, I was almost killed by a sword this time. I don't want to be the dual king of Paris." Mirabeau also got out of the car at this time. He patted Ning on the shoulder. "If Mabley keeps spreading the word, all the stupid sons of nobles in the city will come to duel with you." At this time, Mabley saw Ning, and immediately raised his hand and pointed in Ning's direction. "Everyone, look, the person who smashed the noble's pride is here. Cheer! Cheer for our civilian hero. He is not only fighting back against the contempt for him, but also the arrogance of the nobles towards the civilians." Everyone turned to Ning, and several drunken men in trousers rushed up, lifted Ning up, and threw him high into the sky, shouting as they threw him, "Long live the civilian hero!" Ning was thrown into the air, and she thought to herself that it was fortunate that the bread she had eaten at noon was relatively dry, otherwise she would have to vomit if there was something watery. The civilians in the square all gathered around, and someone shouted to Ning, who was thrown into the sky, "Are you really a noble?" Ning, "No, I'm a shoemaker." "Damn it, don't throw me. I'm the son of a shoemaker." "Then where did you learn the sword?" "I don't know swordsmanship. I just hit blindly." Ning answered truthfully. As he was in the sky, his words were unclear and no one could hear him clearly, so some people were unhappy. "Don't throw him, let him talk." The guys in long trousers who threw Ning must have drunk a lot, and they were not happy, so they continued to throw the civilian hero into the sky again and again. Later, the drunks accidentally threw Ning to the ground, and he finally landed on his feet. Ning rubbed his butt and stood up, and said to the onlookers, "I don't know swordsmanship, and what was said in the special edition is a lie. My ancestors for 8 generations were all civilians wearing long trousers." As soon as he finished speaking, the people around him cheered, "Long live the civilians." It seems that today is destined to be a day for the common people gathered in the royal palace to be proud. No one knows that in another 9 years, they will be even more proud. Ning emphasized his commoner status like this, mainly because he did not want to be mistaken for a nobleman when there were still 9 years before the revolution. After the revolution, the great nobles could still save their lives by sitting on the fence and becoming liberal nobles, but the small nobles were definitely street lamp pendants. However, this special edition has been printed. Will it cause trouble for me in the era of the revolution? In the future, no one will hold this special edition, point at my face and say that I am a noble, right? Ning was a little uneasy, but at this time the people around him began to make a fuss, asking him to talk about how he won the duel. The crowd forcibly pushed Ning onto the flower bed on the side of the road and asked him to tell everyone. And Ning spread his hands. To be honest, I don't know how I won. When they insulted me before, they said that I was able to defeat the robber and save the Duke's daughter because the robber slipped and his neck hit my knife. I guess I was able to win the duel because Lord Reginald slipped and his heart hit the tip of my sword. Everyone laughed. And Ning continued, after I won, the lackey of the Lord Reginald actually pulled out a gun to shoot me, but as soon as he raised the gun, the bullet slipped out of the muzzle and rolled to my feet. That's it. I was just lucky, otherwise, a cobbler's son would never be able to beat a count. The onlookers booed in unison. At this time, someone shouted, they say that guns are the same as bows and crossbows, and are weapons for civilians. This must be the reason why you won. Yes, it must be like this. Long live guns. And Ning followed everyone and shouted long live. Maybe it was true, guns had smoothed out the last hard gap between nobles and commoners, guns had shattered armor, replaced swords, and from then on, military nobles who practiced martial arts could no longer be unrivaled among commoners. The crowd made a noise for a while, and then gradually dispersed. Then Ning found that Fanny and the Duke's butler were standing not far behind him. Butler, Mr. Frost, His Excellency the Duke invites you to dinner. At this time, a line of prompts suddenly popped up in Ning's field of vision. Duke Telestal seems to appreciate you even more. Chapter 21 The Duke's Favor. And Ning frowned slightly, because the Duke certainly didn't just know that he had won the duel. If winning the duel made the Duke appreciate him more, then the change should have occurred when the news reached the Duke's ears. But the prompt popped up now, which means that he did not update his plugin in time. The system will only give corresponding prompts after the Duke expresses something and affects Ning. Combined with the experience of the duel just now, Ning deeply realized that his plugin has limitations and is not as omnipotent as he originally thought. Since the Duke invited him, Ning naturally did not dare to neglect it. The butler took Ning into the main building of the Duke's palace. As soon as he clapped his hands, a group of maids came up to surround Ning and changed his blood-stained clothes. Fanny stood by the side the whole time, watching the maids who were older than her fumbling with Ning like a doll. After Ning changed his clothes, the butler said to him seriously, when you eat later, you can follow Miss Christina's actions. Do what she does, so that you don't violate too many table etiquette. To be honest, Ning, who had just been carried by a team of people outside and shouted for so long as a hero of the common people, was suddenly asked to pay attention to the table etiquette of the aristocracy, which was a bit out of place. But Ning was living under someone else's roof after all, and it was not the time for the noble masters to be ruined, so he thought about it and nodded. Butler, then please follow me. After saying that, the butler led Ning through several doors in succession. The characteristic of the mansions of this era is that there are no long corridors. The rooms are connected to each other, and you have to go through several different rooms to get to a certain room. When Ning came to the main building of the royal palace before, he stayed in the lobby for a while and met Mirabeau and the Duke, so he had no idea about the internal structure of the royal palace. He still remembered it as he saw in the anime, a long corridor with rooms lined up one after another on both sides. I didn't expect it to be like this. When walking through the room, Ning found that the interior of the royal palace was similar to the bank he had visited before, with a mixture of Baroque and Rococo styles. Most of the decoration of the entire room has been changed to the popular Rococo style, but many of the furniture still has the golden feeling of the Baroque era. If you think about it carefully, the Rococo style should have become popular in the Louis XV era, and the two styles are in the process of replacing each other. While Ning was looking around, the butler pushed open the door of the restaurant. Christina was already sitting inside, and she smiled and waved when she saw Ning. Next to Christina was a little boy. Judging from his age, he should be the pit father player Chatel who defected with Dumouriez in later generations. Because he and Dumouriez defected to Austria, the Duke of Orleans, who was originally a Jacobin, was suspected of being an accomplice and was directly sent to the guillotine. For the Duke of Orleans, this was a sudden disaster. He was originally doing well in the Jacobins, and he changed his name to Philip Equality to show his support for the spirit of the Great Revolution. In the end, he still couldn't escape the fate of being pitted by his son. But now, Chatel didn't look like an unfilial son at all. He was just an ordinary-looking noble boy. He looked at Ning curiously, and then asked his sister, I heard that Mr. Frost is a fallen nobleman and has learned swordsmanship. Is that true? No, he is the son of a leatherworker. How can the son of a leather worker beat Reginald? His swordsmanship is said to be among the top 3 in Paris. Chatel said. Christina glanced at Ning and her tone became uncertain. Suddenly Christina turned to Ning. You are not really the son of some fallen nobleman, are you? That would explain your German. And Ning, what are you thinking about? That's not the case. But you looked very skilled in defending Reginald's attack today, like a seasoned swordsman. Christina said relentlessly. A cobbler's son or a layman could never do such a thing. And Ning took his seat under the guidance of the butler, and perfunctorily responded to Christina, that's just because you are a layman, and you have a good relationship with me, so it looks like that. Humans always tend to glorify people who have a good relationship with themselves. Christina was about to answer when a baritone came from behind Ning. That's right, humans do have such a tendency. And Ning looked back and found that it was the Duke, so he quickly stood up and saluted. The Duke waved his hand. Okay, sit down. You are a hero among the common people. I bet you will be the hot topic on every dining table in Paris tonight. Maybe even the king and the queen have heard about you. And Ning teased, maybe they will talk about me when they make a baby tonight. The Duke laughed, maybe it is possible. However, I am not sure whether my brother will sleep with the queen at night. The gossip from the palace says that His Majesty would rather sleep in the tool room with his beloved locks. And Ning was shocked. My goodness, is Louis V in this time and space even more excessive than that in another time and space? But then she thought, the Duke of Orleans in front of her was the mastermind behind all the black materials and gossip about the Queen and the Emperor. And Ning became uncertain again. The Duke walked to the head seat at the table and sat down. He looked at Ning and said, let's talk about yourself. Are you really the son of a leather worker? You know German, and your swordsmanship can beat the top 3 people in Paris. Christina also told me that you can ride a horse. As the son of a leather worker, you know too much, don't you? And Ning, but I am indeed the son of a leather worker. No matter how many people are sent to investigate, this is the fact. As for riding a horse, to be honest, this is my first time riding a horse since leaving Germany. Before that, I only rode a mule, but obviously riding a horse is not a very difficult thing. The same is true for the duel. I am a layman with a sword. I only won by my on-the-spot reaction. Don't get excited, the Duke interrupted Ning. Mr. Frost, I don't doubt you. I just think it's shocking that you, as the son of a leather worker, have such performance. Looking at you, I can't help but think that maybe the era of the common people that those philosophers talked about is really coming. The Duke sighed, then looked at his daughter. Because Christina is old enough to remarry, I have investigated many young people in Paris. Let me tell you, the entire aristocratic circle in Paris is rotten, and I can't find a young man I am willing to marry my daughter to. And Ning frowned, wondering what was going on. Is the Duke planning to marry his daughter? The Duke continued to speak to himself. More than one family came to me to propose marriage, but as soon as I saw their sons, I wanted to chase them away like flies. So, sending her to the military academy in Brienne might be a good choice. And Ning had 1,000 no ways popping up in her mind, and she waited quietly for the Duke to continue. Duke, of course, I am a little worried about a girl going to military school, because military school is a man's world after all. But now this problem has been solved. I have decided to sponsor you to go to Brienne Military Academy. I will provide all your tuition and miscellaneous fees. With a guy like you in Brienne to take care of Christina, I think there will be no problem. And Ning half opened his mouth. He thought that it was a certainty that he would go to Brienne Military Academy. He didn't expect that the Duke would only decide to sponsor him now. His previous statement was not real. No, it should be that I took the other person's silence as a promise without authorization. The Duke, in addition, if you can be admitted to the military academy in Paris after graduating from the military academy in Brienne, I will continue to support you. The house you live in now will always belong to you. And Ning, thank you, Duke. But the house is a bit big. If it's just me, I have to clean it and so on. The Duke waved his hand. No problem, Fanny, what do you think? From now on, she will be your maid. Of course, I will pay her salary. And Ning, really? That's great. As he said that, he glanced at Fanny who was helping to distribute the tableware next to him, and smiled slightly when his eyes met. Fanny had a stern face, and it was hard to tell whether she was sad or happy. But Christina said, that's great, Fanny. Fanny, yes. At this time, the Duchess also took her seat, so the butler stepped forward and asked, Sir, Can we start eating? The Duke nodded. Okay, let's start the prayer before the meal. France is a Catholic country, and before the meal, people have to pray under the leadership of the host. Although Ning followed everyone else and clasped his hands together and closed his eyes, his attention was completely on the dinner that the servants had already placed on the side table. He seemed to smell a very nice aroma of roasted goose liver. Speaking of which, he had traveled to France for so long, but he had never eaten a proper French meal. Well, he had eaten authentic baguettes, and the taste was almost like chewing wood. While Ning was daydreaming, the Duke shouted, "Amen." Everyone followed, "Amen." The Duke opened his eyes and snapped his fingers, and the servants began to serve the dishes. The first appetizer to come up was the bread basket. Ning looked at the baguette inside and instantly felt the desire to complain. At this time, Fanny, who was in charge of serving the dishes with the maids, put a small bowl in front of Ning. The maid whispered, "Butter goose liver sauce, spread it on the bread." Ning glanced at Christina, who had already started to spread it on the bread, and hurriedly picked up a piece of bread, then used a butter knife to scrape a piece of goose liver sauce and spread it on the bread, and then put it in his mouth. The taste is not bad. Maybe it was because Ning hadn't eaten anything good for a long time. He decided not to think about other things for the time being and enjoy his first proper French meal after traveling to France. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22: The Rose of Versailles. The next dish looked like a layer of celery covered in white soup. Fanny whispered the name of the dish, cream bullfrog. And Ning said oh, then scooped a spoonful with a spoon and put it into her mouth. The first feeling was a bit strange, like ice cream at room temperature. The bullfrog meat was stewed very well and melted in the mouth. Moreover, there were no bullfrog bones in this dish, which should have been removed in advance. As for the layer of things that looked like celery, it was actually a kind of vegetable like lettuce. In short, the taste of the whole dish was even stranger. And Ning suppressed the strong desire to complain while eating. Fortunately, the portion of this dish was not large, so she finished it in a short time. Just when she finished eating, the servants came up and took away the empty plates. When Fanny brought the next dish, she announced the name of the dish in Ning's ear as expected, Provence stew. And Ning looked at the dish in front of her, which was a series of vegetables stewed together, such as mushrooms, eggplants, cucumbers, etc., and didn't know how to comment for a while. Isn't this just a simple stew? French 3 fresh vegetables? However, Ning has been eating bread since he traveled through time, and has basically not consumed any vegetables. It is not a bad thing to supplement vegetable vitamins at this time. So Ning began to stuff vegetables into his mouth. At this time, the Duke's son, Chatel, who was sitting opposite, was unhappy. "I don't like Provence stew. I don't want to eat eggplant." The Duchess, "If you don't want to eat, just watch there and wait for the next dish." Chatel, "I want to eat bullfrog. I want to eat snails." The Duchess stopped putting eggplant into her mouth and shouted, "Enough. Snails are something that only common people eat." And Ning raised his eyebrows and glanced at the Duchess. "So French nobles don't eat snails? Could it be that common people can't eat meat, so they catch snails as a meal substitute? Is it a unique feature of France in this time and space, or is it the case in history?" And Ning was puzzled while eating mixed vegetable stew. He found that Provence stew tasted pretty good. After finishing the stew, Ning felt half full. It seems that the French food of this era is not the same as the Western food of later generations that makes people feel full. The servants came up to collect the plates again. Then the next dish was served. It was still Fanny who served Ning. She whispered, "This is the main course, steak with red wine sauce." The aroma of steak penetrated Ning's nostrils, but unfortunately he was already half full, so his appetite was not particularly good. Everyone at the table started to use knives and forks, so Ning had to follow suit. He cut a small piece of steak, but found that the meat inside the steak was still pink. This steak might be only 3 well done. Ning had never eaten such a raw steak in his life. But now the Duke's family is eating raw meat and drinking blood, it would be bad if he didn't eat it, so Ning patiently stuffed the steak into his mouth. There was no bloody smell as imagined. In fact, the taste of this steak was quite good, and it was a tender and smooth feeling that Ning had never experienced before. Could it be that steak is like the white-cut chicken of Guangdong people, which also requires the right amount of heat to be cooked through, and cannot be stewed too much? And Ning thought while continuing to taste the rare steak. After eating the steak, it was time for dessert. Today, the Duke's dessert was fruit salad. After eating the salad, an authentic French meal ended. And Ning looked out the window and found that it was still light outside before dinner, but after dinner, the sky outside was as dark as ink. Eating Western food is a waste of time. The Duke wiped his mouth and looked at his daughter. Christina, do you have any activities tonight? Christina, Dad, there is a ball at the Palace of Versailles tonight. Do you think I should go? Of course I should go. I should show up at the royal ball as much as possible. The Duke glanced at Ning and said, let the civilian hero accompany you. This way, there will probably be fewer people who come to you to propose marriage in the future. And Ning thought to herself, good guy, this is asking you to be a human shield for your daughter. And Ning, is it not appropriate for a commoner like me to attend a court ball? As soon as he finished speaking, Christina shook her head and said, how could that be? In fact, many commoners attend aristocratic balls. Last time I was at Madame Necker's ball, I saw a clerk's wife. She looked no different from a noble lady. It seems that the urban middle class of this era has been trying to learn the lifestyle of the aristocracy. I just wonder if the clerk's wife that Christina mentioned will borrow jewelry from someone to attend the ball, like the heroine in a certain novel. And Ning, in that case, I'll go and take a look, but I may not have clothes suitable for a court ball. The Duke waved his hand and said, don't worry about that. Just leave it to my butler. I have plenty of clothes at home. The Duke used to be stingy with clothes, but now he has become so generous. It can only be said that the title of commoner hero is indeed very important. Christina stood up, then I will go and get ready, Mr. Frost, see you later. And Ning looked at Christina's dress and thought to herself, why do you still need to get ready? You can just wear this dress, it's already beautiful enough. But the girl ignored Ning's thoughts and left the table with a smile. The Duke looked at Ning, you should also change your clothes. The butler immediately stepped forward, Mr. Frost, this way. And Ning wiped her mouth, stood up, and nodded to the butler. The Palace of Versailles is on the outskirts of Paris, quite a distance away from the city. And Ning sat in the carriage, looking at the thick night outside the window, and muttered, there is not even a street lamp. Christina, who was sitting opposite, asked in confusion, this road is in the wild, there are no houses around, it's all royal forbidden forests, who are you lighting the lights for? And Ning, for the rabbits. Christina laughed. At this time, and Ning saw lights appear outside the window. There are lights. We should be there soon, those are the lights of the palace. At this time the coachman opened the window in front of the carriage and reported in a low voice, we will soon arrive at Versailles. Christina, I know. And Ning opened the window, and the sound of music floated in. Christina, the ball has already started. And Ning, is it okay that we are late? No, it's common for people to be late for this kind of ball. After all, the Palace of Versailles is so far away from Paris. And Ning, will the royal family not think you are neglecting them? Christina smiled, what are you talking about? I am the daughter of the Duke of Orleans. My father is always funding others to write about the Queen's love affairs. And Ning, yes, your father has always neglected the royal family. Christina, it is said that the Queen has been furious about this several times. Then why did you come to the Queen's ball? If I had always ignored the Queen's ball, that would have been really neglectful. Christina smiled, and no matter how angry the Queen is in private, she will definitely be in a good mood at the ball. And Ning, after all, your family is considered a royal family. No, the royal family owes my father money. And Ning, so that's how it is. Chapter 23, Confronting the Deficit Queen. After the carriage stopped, and Ning was the first to open the door and get out, then turned around and held Christina's hand and helped her get out. Christina, you are quite familiar with this set of etiquette. And Ning, there is a proverb in my hometown, which says that even if you haven't eaten pork, you have seen pigs run. For example, even if you haven't experienced it yourself, you will have heard about it a little bit. What a strange proverb. Christina laughed. At this time, the guards of the palace came forward. Excuse me, who are you? Christina, I am the daughter of the Duke of Telestal, and this is my dance partner. And Ning introduced himself, I am the son of a leather worker and scene, Andy Frost. When the guard heard Ning introduce himself, he looked at him in surprise. This is the royal ball, Do you have an invitation? It is impossible for a leatherworker's son to get an invitation to the royal ball. Christina stepped forward. Frost is my savior, and he also received the Legion of Honor on the German battlefield. Guard, so you are a war hero. I'm sorry, but I don't think I saw you wearing a medal. And Ning, because my medal has not been awarded to me yet, but General Carnegie has indeed applied for it for me. Guard, is that so? Then there is no problem. Please come this way, the ball is being held in the palace garden. The guard began to lead the way. Christina naturally took Ning's arm. The evening dress Christina wore had a low color that was unique to this era. When she took Ning's arm like this, Ning's entire left field of vision was occupied by white. Christina took Ning's hand and followed the guard into the palace garden. The place was brightly lit, and with the sound of music, the ladies were like blooming roses on the dance floor. At this time, a gentleman came forward to greet Christina. Hey, isn't this Christina? And this one, is he the civilian swordsman who won the duel this afternoon? And Ning, well, I did win the duel this afternoon. I wonder if you are. He is Viscount Raphael, the son of Count Ryan. Christina said as she stretched out her hand, so Viscount Raphael kissed her hand respectfully. Oh Christina, Raphael said in a poetic tone, your arrival makes the whole ball more gorgeous. Christina smiled and said, don't say that, the queen will be unhappy if she hears it. What's wrong with me? A voice pretending to be majestic came. And Ning looked in the direction of the voice and saw a graceful and elegant woman walking towards this side. The woman's appearance made Ning think that she saw the goddess Audrey Hepburn for a moment, and she was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. Christina let go of Ning's arm, pinched the corner of her skirt and saluted the woman. Your Majesty, good evening. It turned out to be the deficit Queen Mary herself. And Ning quickly imitated Raphael and saluted the queen. The queen looked at Ning. Are you the son of the shoemaker who won the duel this afternoon? And Ning, yes. Some people say that you are the son of a fallen noble, so you learn swordsmanship. The queen stepped forward and ignored Christina next to her. Is that so? No, I am indeed the son of a shoemaker. But you beat the most powerful swordsman in Paris. And Ning raised her eyebrows. That means Reginald is not as powerful as he boasted. But he has won 3 duels. That means the people who dueled with him before were worse than him. And Ning shrugged. At this time, Christina forced her way in. Andy saved me on the battlefield. He has seen the cruelty of the battlefield. How can he be compared to a playboy like Reginald? The queen glanced at Christina, not hiding her dissatisfaction with her interrupting. Christina, I heard that you disguised yourself as a man and went to the battlefield. Christina nodded. Yes, I did. The queen glanced at her chest and smiled. How did you do it? It must be difficult for you to do it like a man with your figure. And Ning silently agreed in her heart. Indeed. Christina, nothing is impossible. If Joan of Arc from Orleans could do it, I can do it too. And Ning, Joan of Arc didn't disguise herself as a man, right? And she is not from Orleans, she was born in Champagne. Christina stared at Ning, and the expression on her face seemed to ask which side are you from? The queen smiled and said, it seems that you have a wide range of knowledge. No wonder everyone says that you are the descendant of a declining noble family. And Ning, if a person is knowledgeable, people will say that he is a declining noble or something. This is not right. Commoners can also have knowledge. Queen, you are worthy of being a retainer of the Duke of Orleans. His Excellency the Duke is almost praising commoners to the sky. A woman behind the queen immediately said, it's a pity that this is France. Commoners are only the 3rd class in our subjects. And Ning glanced at the woman who was speaking and asked in confusion, who are you? Woman, oh my, who are you? Marie, look, this commoner doesn't know the etiquette of the ball at all. Hearing the woman calling the queen Marie directly, and Ning roughly guessed the identity of the woman. She should be the queen's best friend, Madame Lamballe. And Ning's guess was immediately confirmed by Christina. Andy, this is Madame Lamballe, a good friend of Her Majesty the Queen. Madame Lamballe snorted. Yesterday I heard that Reginald was challenged by a commoner. I wanted to go and see the excitement today, but then I thought that the commoner would definitely be killed instantly by the experienced Reginald, so I didn't go. And Ning, so you missed my wonderful performance today. Madame Lamballe rolled her eyes. Although I didn't go to see it, I can guess that it must be because Reginald underestimated the enemy. But is it okay for you to be so early? Reginald's father, Marcus Richard, loves his son very much. I guess when the news reaches his territory, he will come to Paris to find you and ask for an explanation. And Ning raised her eyebrows. I thought the nobles all lived in Paris. In this era, many French nobles did not stay in their territories, but purchased properties in Paris to live in, and handed over their territories to housekeepers and agents to manage. Many French peasants of this era had never seen their lords since they were born. They only knew that their lord stewards would come to collect taxes. The organizers of life in French villages had long since changed from lords to parish priests. The rule of feudal lords over their subjects had long been in name only. But there were always exceptions. After the outbreak of the revolution, these nobles who still lived in the countryside were sent to lampposts by the peasants. Madame Lambour looked at Ning arrogantly. Marcus Richard liked his castle. He just sent his beloved son to Paris to study. Now his beloved son is killed by you. The Marquis will definitely abandon the castle and come here to hold you accountable. Just wait, there will be a good show. You'd better find yourself a good lawyer. Queen Marie looked at Ning and said in a loud voice, you can go and ask the Duke to help you find a lawyer. I just don't know if the lawyers in Paris will sue for the son of a shoemaker. And Ning corrected with a smile, my father is a leatherworker, which is different from a shoemaker. Of course he also makes shoes, but his main job is leather products. The Queen and her bestie seemed to be amused by Ning's correction. Listen, Mary. Leather products. When he said this, it seemed like they were something valuable. I heard it, my dear. For ordinary people, leather products may indeed be valuable items. And Ning, sorry, I forgot that this is the palace. In the palace, locks are valuable items. Christina, PFFT. Christina, who accidentally laughed, quickly frowned. The Queen stared at Ning fiercely. It was obvious that Ning's words touched her sore spot. Her husband, King Louis V of France, was an excellent locksmith. He was much more interested in tinkering with various locks than in tinkering with his own queen. Do you know? The Queen gritted her teeth and said to Ning, if it was in the past, this sentence just now would be enough to get you hanged. And Ning shrugged, it's a pity that there is now the Paris Supreme Court. The royal family can no longer hang people at will. Even if it is a son of a leatherworker like me. The French Supreme Court during this period was actually an institution used by the nobility and the emerging bourgeoisie to limit the royal power. The court would not only prevent the king from arbitrarily executing people, but also prevent some of the king's policies. Later, one of the main reasons why the French emperor convened the three-level parliament was that the Supreme Court said that if you want to increase taxes, you must convene the three-level parliament, otherwise it is not allowed. Queen Marie's face was full of dissatisfaction with Ning. At this time, Christina suddenly cleared her throat. Well, the royal family still owes my father. Please enjoy the ball, both of you. The Queen showed an amazing talent for changing faces. And Ning couldn't help but say, the royal family is in so much debt, is it okay to hold such a luxurious ball? Christina gently kicked Ning's shoes. The Queen and her bestie pretended not to hear Ning's complaints, and left with their heads held high. Christina took Ning, come, let me introduce my friends to you. Everyone must want to meet the civilian swordsman who defeated the Paris dual king. Chapter 24 Nightmares and Preparing for a Rainy Day. It was almost 3 o'clock when Ning came back from the dance that night. After sending Christina home, she returned to her residence and saw Fanny still waiting for her. And Ning, it's so late. As a servant, you have to get up early tomorrow. You can go to bed first. That won't work. If a servant goes to bed before the master, it's dereliction of duty. And Ning, I don't have such a rule here. You should go to bed when you should. Although Ning said this, it still felt good to see Fanny waiting for her. In her previous life, as a single worker, Ning didn't have anyone waiting for her at home. Every time she got home from get off work, she faced an empty and quiet home. If she had come home in her previous life and saw a lovely maid like Fanny waiting for her, her sense of happiness would definitely have been greatly improved. Unfortunately, this was just a delusion in her previous life. Unless there is a breakthrough in robot technology in the future, making household-made robots a daily necessity, it is basically impossible to have such a thing. But it's not bad to realize this dream in this life. Fanny observed Ning carefully and suddenly said, actually, you must be happy to see me waiting for you, right? Well, indeed. Ning admitted, but one thing is for sure, I hope you choose to wait for me to come back because you are worried about me, rather than because of the obligation between master and servant. I hope we can be friends, not master and servant. Fanny was amazed. Friends? It's really interesting that you actually want to be friends with a servant. No? In my opinion, You are also a lovely woman. Isn't it human nature to want to be friends with lovely women? And Ning said, Fanny, but I'm a maid. I'm the son of a cobbler. And your perception is wrong. Everyone should be born equal. You've heard too many speeches by Mabley. Just treat it like this. Anyway, don't treat me as a master in the future, but as a friend. Well, it's getting late. You have to get up early tomorrow morning, right? Go to sleep. Fanny didn't leave. I'm going to make the bed for you. Are you going to sleep? Yes, I am going to sleep. Just make it casually. Fanny picked up the candlestick on the table. Then please follow me upstairs. After a while, Ning finally fell asleep on the bed, holding the candlestick, and whispered, Good night, Mr. Frost. Good night. Ning said. He was indeed very tired all day today, so he fell asleep quickly, and then he dreamed that Reginald's father, Marcus Litchell, sent him to court in a menacing manner and accused him of murder. The Duke hired a lawyer to defend the Marcus, but the lawyer turned against him in court, believing that the Marcus was a nobleman and that nobility was justice. So Ning was sentenced to death and hanged immediately. Ning dreamed that he was on the gallows, and then he asked the executioner in confusion, shouldn't France use the guillotine? The next moment the gallows turned into a guillotine, and Louis V personally adjusted the settings of the guillotine, and then said to Ning happily, This new guillotine I invented will never cause pain and is extremely efficient. Then Ning was pressed on the guillotine, and the dream ended at this time. Ning sat up suddenly and found that he was sweating. He recalled the content of the dream and thought to himself that no, he had to find a reliable lawyer. At least he had to find a lawyer who would not be partial because of the identity of a commoner or a noble. Although the Marcus might not really come to accuse him of murder, it is always right to be prepared at this time. Speaking of lawyers, Ning suddenly thought of a person. Later, during the French Revolution, this person was elected to the National Assembly because of his frequent help to civilians in lawsuits. This person is Maximilien François Marie Isidore de Robespierre. At this time, Robespierre should be studying for a bachelor's degree in law school, just in Paris. Robespierre's grandfather and father were both lawyers, and they both had experience in helping civilians in lawsuits. It must be reliable to find him at this time. Later, Robespierre will return to his hometown of Arras, where he will serve as a lawyer and judge until the convening of the three-level parliament in 1789. Ning made up his mind and got up and dressed. Fanny seemed to be deliberately on time and knocked on the door when Ning put on his pants and shirt. Come in. Ning said. Fanny opened the door and came in, looking at Ning. Breakfast is ready. Are you going to eat in the bedroom? Can I go somewhere else to eat? Ning asked back. Fanny, the Duke said yesterday that if you are willing to have breakfast together, you can come over. Ning shook his head. I'd better not disturb the Duke's family life. Fanny nodded, turned and left, and came back with breakfast a while later. This morning there were eggs, bread and smoked ham slices, which were much richer than yesterday's breakfast. Ning, is it my illusion? I feel like my food standard seems to have improved. It's the Duke's intention. You are now the Duke's VIP guest. Fanny replied. Ning shrugged. He was putting on the last piece of clothes. After Fanny put down the breakfast, she came forward to help Ning put on his clothes. Ning, by the way, I plan to go to Louis Le Grand University this morning. Can you help me call a carriage? Fanny asked in confusion. Why are you going there? I want to find a lawyer. At the ball yesterday, the Queen's best friend, Madame Lambeau, said that Reginald's father would be furious and would definitely come to Paris to seek an explanation for his son. Fanny, then why not use the Duke's lawyer? The Duke has already recognized the result of this duel. He will not allow a country Marcus to dictate to his guests. Ning raised his eyebrows. This is indeed the truth, but last night's dream was really a bit humble. Ning can even recall the feeling of the guillotine lock clamping his neck. And as part of the future fence-sitting plan, it's not bad to get to know Robespierre in advance. Before entering the second half of 1893, the Jacobins were still relatively reasonable. Later, the situation was too critical, and they had no choice but to start implementing the policy of terror. As long as one could go outside to command the army before the Jacobins began to implement the policy of terror, and avoid that era of butcher knives waving and blood flowing like rivers. Ning thought so, and said to Fanny, I want to find a lawyer who is willing to defend me for the common people against the nobles. Fanny, do you know such a lawyer? No, I don't know, so I'm going to find one. Ning said so. Fanny looked at him with a puzzled look. Start looking now? Can you find one? Why don't you ask Mr. Mirabeau for help? That drunkard has a lot of connections in Paris. And Ning, did you just call Mirabeau a drunkard? That's the fact, Fanny said with certainty, and Mirabeau always looks at Miss Christina with a lecherous look. And Ning, really? Fanny, yes. And he also looks at you with a lecherous look. That's not the case, but it's even more annoying. Even more annoying. After Fanny finished her sharp review of Mirabeau, she said seriously, but he does have a wide network of contacts. Maybe he knows a lawyer who is willing to help commoners sue against nobles. And Ning thought about it and felt that it would not be possible to find Robespierre by going directly to the Louis Le Grand College. It would be more reliable to ask Mirabeau first and ask him to introduce him. So he asked Fanny, "So, when will Mr. Mirabeau come to the royal palace?" "Fanny, he lives nearby, and the house is also the property of the Duke." "Okay, then I will visit him in the morning." "You should first ask the servant to give him a message saying that you want to visit. Then you go and give him a message. This kind of thing is usually done by male servants who are responsible for running errands. How can you let your own maid run errands?" "And Ning, you are my only maid, there are no male servants." "Then let the groom of the Duke's mansion do it," Fanny suggested. "And Ning, then please go find the groom and ask him to tell Mirabeau that I plan to visit him in the morning." Fanny nodded. "Okay, I will." And Ning let out a long sigh, sat down at the table and began to enjoy today's hearty breakfast. Chapter 25 Brittany Club. Mirabeau lived in a 3-story house on the roadside. This whole row of houses was said to be the property of the Duke of Orleans. Now they are all open to the citizens of Paris, and a series of shops have been opened. The royal palace has become the axis of life in the city of Paris. People from several nearby blocks will go to the royal palace to meet their needs. As soon as Fanny knocked on the door, an old woman opened the door. "It's Mr. Frost. Mr. Mirabeau is waiting for you on the 2nd floor." Fanny stepped back half a step to make way, and Ning strode into Mirabeau's residence. The old lady led the way in front, and when she reached the 2nd floor, she gently knocked on the door of the room on the side of the corridor. "Mr. Mirabeau, Mr. Frost is here. Come in." Mirabeau's voice came from the room, and the old woman opened the door and stepped aside. And Ning walked to the door and looked inside, and found that Mr. Mirabeau was wearing his wig askew and writing furiously at the table. "And Ning, am I disturbing you?" No. Mirabeau raised his eyes and straightened his wig. "Come in and sit down. Mrs. Evans, please serve the tea." "Fanny, I'll help serve the tea." Mirabeau smiled and said, "It seems that Mr. Frost has become accustomed to taking the maid around with him. It feels good to be served, right?" And Ning shook her head. "No, I just don't know the way, so I asked Fanny to lead the way." And Ning pulled over a chair and sat down, then went straight to the point. "Mr. Mirabeau, this is the case. Yesterday I went to a ball at the Palace of Versailles." "Really? Then you must have become the focus of attention." Mirabeau said with a smile, "There should be a lot of curious noble ladies who want to meet the heir of the hidden noble who defeated Reginald." And Ning, "Well, that's true. The rumor that I am a hidden noble is more popular than expected, but as soon as Christina and I danced, the rumor was refuted. And Ning's cheat does not include dancing, so when Christina dragged him into the dance floor last night, he was immediately exposed. He stepped on Christina's feet 3 times, and the nobles who were resting next to the dance floor laughed. Since then, no one believed that Andy Frost was a descendant of a hidden noble." After Ning told Mirabeau, he laughed out loud. "Indeed, no noble would step on the feet of a beauty like Miss Christina 3 times in a row. Have you never learned how to dance?" "Yes," and Ning nodded. "Last night was my first time dancing." "Should I say you are courageous?" Mirabeau smiled. "You obviously can't dance, but you still took a girl to the dance floor. This is your fault." And Ning curled his lips. In fact, he didn't mean it. He just trusted his cheat too much. Who knew that the cheat didn't care about dancing at all? "Mirabeau, so you came all the way to tell me this?" "No, it's not." And Ning repeated everything that Madame Lamballe said yesterday. Mirabeau frowned. "I don't know the Marquis Richard, so I can't tell what he will do. I just heard that he has a bad reputation in his territory, and the people believe that he is possessed by the devil." And Ning thought, wouldn't this Marquis be a perfect street lamp ornament? When the revolution came, the nobles in the city were not necessarily hanged on the street lamps, But those nobles who exploited the people in the countryside were sent to the gallows one by the peasants who couldn't make a living. Mirabeau added, but there are witnesses to this duel. In addition to the witnesses from both sides, there is also a third-party witness, Father Silas. Even if the Marquis comes, he probably won't be able to do anything. Ending, it's better to prepare for a rainy day. Find a good lawyer first, so as to avoid being in a hurry when something really happens. Then can't we just ask the Duke's lawyer for help? Ending, I want to ask a lawyer who is willing to help civilians, so that I can ensure that he will do his best. Mirabeau, I do know some lawyers who are willing to help civilians, but they are not in Paris now. Ending, I heard that there is a student from Arras at the University of Paris. His father has always been fighting lawsuits for civilians. I believe he would be happy to help the son of a shoemaker. Mirabeau, Arras, you don't mean the Roman? Ending asked puzzledly, Roman. Mirabeau, you don't know? There's a student from Arras at the University of Paris. Because he speaks Latin and Greek very well, he is nicknamed the Roman. He also recited hymns in Latin when the current king and queen visited the University of Paris. Ning remembered that Robespierre did recite a dedication to Louis V when he was a student. He saw it on a certain history marketing account. The marketing account also lamented that Robespierre at that time would never have thought that he would send Louis V to the guillotine. Ning, maybe it was indeed this Roman. Do you know him? At this time, Mirabeau's old servants Mrs. Evans and Fanny brought tea and snacks together. Mirabeau made a gesture of invitation, have some snacks. This was sent by Madame Roland yesterday. It's good stuff. It seems that Mirabeau is indeed as rumored. He has a very good relationship with people. Noble ladies often send him some snacks and small gifts. Ning tasted a piece of snacks and it was so sweet that he wanted to vomit. France already had Caribbean colonies at that time, so sugar should not be as scarce as before, but it was obvious that the pastry chef still regarded sweetness as a symbol of luxury and put a lot of sugar. Mirabeau laughed and said, it's terribly sweet, right? Because of the damn war, the British blocked our maritime trade, and now the price of sugar on the market has risen several times, so the desserts of the nobles add sugar to show off their wealth. So that's it. Ning almost forgot that France was fighting the 7 Years' War, which started almost 30 years late. Mirabeau said again, I don't know this Roman, but I know which club he often appears in. People in Brittany organize a party, and this person from Arras was often mixed in it for some reason. Ning was shocked. The Jacobin Club of the Jacobins was originally the Breton Club, which was mainly a group of Bretons. But it was indeed strange that Robespierre often attended Breton gatherings. His hometown, Arras, belonged to the Channel province, in Calais, far away from Brittany. Ning, do you have a way to get me to join this party? This is not a gathering of nobles, is it? Of course not. In fact, most people at this kind of gathering are civilians. The nobles mainly rely on balls for socializing. The endless balls are all led by the deficit queen. They would rather borrow money to hold luxurious balls. Mirabeau did not hide his disdain at all. If most nobles were as good at business as the Duke of Orleans, France's finances would not be like this. Mirabeau paused, and at this moment, the sound of the cannon to correct the time at noon came from the window. He immediately took out his pocket watch, calibrated the time, and muttered, it's 5 minutes late. It seems that I should find a place to repair this pocket watch. Then Mirabeau stood up, how about this, you want to find Robespierre, I will take you to the Breton party in the afternoon, maybe you can run into him. But I personally still think you don't need to worry too much, you are just a Marquis, but you are a guest of honor of the Duke. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.